Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Budget Committee. We have today all of the staff presentations that we'll be going through and a number of other items. Before we go any further, any member of the public wishing to speak further regarding an issue on the 2015 Budget Committee agenda may appear before Council at its meeting on March 30th, 2015 at 7 p.m. when the recommendations from the meeting will go forward for final consideration. If you wish to speak as a delegation, please sign the sheet located at the back of the room or notify the Clerk's Department no later than noon the day of the Council meeting. Any PowerPoint presentations must also be forwarded to the Clerk's Department no later than noon the day of the meeting. Members of committee, I don't have any regrets. I believe the Mayor is on his way. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? See none. Very good. Members of committee, there is an addendum, and that includes the commissioner presentations. I'd like to move that to the beginning of the meeting to make that the first item that we deal with, and then go through the various reports afterwards. Members of committee, you should have that document in front of you. That's the presentation material. I've also had circulated some information regarding the pavement network performance for our consideration later on as well. So moving on then to the first item and the presentations by our staff. Jane Kurdimash, I think you're leading us off, and we'll go through each of the various components. And what I'd like to do is, as we go through each section, we'll ask members of committee if there are any questions for that section, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to lead off and walk you through the functions that are associated with the Office of the CAO. But before I do, I just wanted to review a little bit our Sustainable Community Framework, Vision 2057. We talked a little bit about it at the strategic planning session, so I just wanted to highlight that the framework outlines all of our planning components, and we integrate them, and actually the budget level is where you'll see a lot of the detailed reporting out. So you have the key strategic directions, which are our long-term master plans, the 4 to 25 years. We've just spent time on the Council strategic plan and developing that, which looks at what you want to accomplish throughout your term of Council. And then what we're talking about today are our departmental budgets and business plans, and that's really looking at, we'll highlight for you what we accomplished last year as well as looking ahead to the next year. I'll be speaking about tabs 4, 5, and 6 in your binder. And I just want to highlight, in administrative executive management, we've incorporated internal audit. It is included as well. So just looking at the tax levy for these functions, most of the increases that you're seeing reflect contractual increases and costs associated with salaries and benefit increases throughout the year. I did want to highlight under strategy, policy, and communications, there is a transfer of a position from capital, which was related to our web enhancements. Over the last 3 years, we've expanded our social media presence, we've expanded our web applications dramatically, and we've been funding a position to monitor these and to do this work through capital, and this has been transferred into the operating budget. As I can safely say that I don't think social media and the web are going away. I'm pretty confident at this point in giving that proclamation. Looking back at last year, the 24 accomplishments, and I've highlighted around 2 themes in our strategic plan: accountability and financial sustainability. In 2014, the town launched its confidential ethics and efficiency hotline to the public. It had been launched the prior year to staff, and now it's available to the public if they want to report any activity. In terms of our tax increase from last year's budget, it was at 0.7%, which was below the rate of inflation as directed by Council. The internal audit program completed 6 program audits, as well as looking at the overall for the town's risk assessment program. We also launched an open data pilot project, and this is part of our comprehensive look at how we support open government through online communications. And in this pilot project, we launched about 46 data sets, of which the public has downloaded those data sets about 2,000 times. So that was quite a successful launch, and you'll be hearing more about that in April when we report back on the pilot project. In looking at the outstanding service, highlighting Service Oakville, again, the demand continues to grow. We had over 95,000 inquiries in 2014 and issued 10,000 service requests. And again, the focus of this strategy that Council endorsed beginning in 2009 is really trying to move to a one town, one window approach for residents so that they have just one contact number that they can get the service that they require. Recognizing that online is an important part of service requests as well. In 2014, we launched our online report a problem tool for selected program areas. And in some cases, that tool, which was launched in May, is recording upwards of about 20 to 25% of actual service requests. So it's been particularly successful related to park problems as well as streetlight issues that people are reporting. We have spent a lot of time in the web area around accessibility because of requirements through the AODA for accessible websites. A lot of our focus over the last 2 years has been ensuring that the content on the website is accessible and ensuring our applications are accessible. And this has been quite extensive. We've also developed a training program. Last year we trained our over 30 web content publishers in web accessibility standards. And this year we will be rolling out the training to all of staff who, in conjunction with the rollout of Windows 13, I think it is, because there are things that everybody can do just in their emails, in their letters that would support accessibility. So we'll be providing that to Council as well. Again, we continue to expand our online presence through social media sites, and a lot of programs can get into targeted social media. The Hockey League, for example, through 16 Mile has its own social media feed that allows people to really, again, feel involved, feel engaged. That's one of the big components around social media. People feel an intimacy and a connection that they don't get with just a website. And we have increased our followers and likes by 60% in the last year, so it continues to grow quite quickly. When we look at the measures, because again, as you know, through the program-based, performance-based budgeting, we do measure our performance outcomes. In terms of fiscal sustainability, again, we're meeting the targets that had been established. On the internal audit, the issue in terms of the yellow in that category, the internal auditor, completed 6 audits rather than the 10 he had originally hoped for, but it had to do with the complexity of the audits that he undertook. It was just not able to complete the full workload. In terms of citizen satisfaction with the town, and I know we just reported out on our citizen satisfaction survey, which we used for the first 3 measures that you see. So again, high levels of citizen satisfaction, and in terms of overall satisfaction with timeliness of service, that's an area that has grown significantly over the last 5 years with the launch of Service Oakville. And in terms of our Service Oakville standards, which is our goal is to answer 80% of calls within 30 seconds, and we're achieving and exceeding that target. Looking at an engaged and informed community, and this is really part of our commitment, again, around open government and having people involved in local government. We're focusing on the information that's provided by the town, making sure people feel they have access to the information, and I know this has been important to Council, and in terms of ensuring information was available sooner to the public so they had more time to review it before Council meetings. The 74% satisfied with opportunities for public involvement, and again, that's a high level. It's a lower standard because it's very hard to achieve higher than that, but we do know that we have a very engaged community in Oakville, and so we're continuing to expand, and you'll see that in some of our initiatives for next year. The website, as I mentioned, continues to grow. That's where people are turning for their first look for information. It may not be their last look, and we do know we have a lot of contact with the town is through telephone. I mean, 90,000 calls is a lot of calls, but we do know that they're looking first to the website to look for information. And that involved 700,000 people actually visited the website and looked at over 3.6 million pages in 2014. When we're looking at 2015, and actually citizen survey would have been one of the initiatives, but we've already completed it. The council's 2015 to 18 strategic plan is underway, and we'll report back to council in April. Our open data pilot project, you're also going to be hearing about that in April. It'll have been running for a year, and it's really actually morphed quite a bit. We had started it looking at, what can we do around releasing data that, so the public can have access to this data, and what can they create? Is there opportunity for economic development by creating apps? What we've learned as a standalone, Oakville might not have the mass to generate economic activity. People are looking for information across jurisdictions. They're looking for large audiences. But it does give people a start, so that we've got some really interesting things that people have done with our data, and then they look to partner with other jurisdictions to try to create apps. And we'll use the example of the waste collection app that we use, Halton Region uses. That was originally developed in Vancouver and has now pretty much spread across the whole country. In terms of Service Oakville and where we are with our program areas, this year we're focusing on consolidating parking. By June, we'll have the parking enforcement calls. We'll be going through Service Oakville to have a consolidated approach, and by the end of the year, we'll have consolidated all of the parking calls. We'll also have an RFP going out to look at a new after-hours call handling service. Right now, we do handle non-emergency public safety calls through Appleby Dispatch, and we're looking to replace that with actual a call center operations that we can measure service, and Appleby has indicated, again, because those calls tend to increase during major events when emergency calls are coming in through Appleby Dispatch, so it's not an ideal fit, so they're actually looking to get out of that business. And I think by having a service do it that can integrate with our systems, it allows us to track those calls and be much more efficient in dispatch to handle those calls. As you may recall from the citizen survey, in terms of people looking for more online tools, to looking to the website, so we've got a lot of focus on the website. We are actually hope to award a contract by the end of March. We've just evaluating the request for proposals now to develop a mobile app. So we know that the use of smartphones and tablets is increasing. It's about 20%, just over 20% in terms of the access to the town information. And by having a mobile app, we will bring together so people can access through their smartphone a town app that will give them the key information that they want. It'll give them access to those tools. We do have a responsive design on our website, so it will scale to fit a phone, but at least with my eyes, we're all doing this on our phone to increase the font to make it a little bit bigger. This will allow it much easier for people to get to the information they want. We're looking at, for council meetings, a new live streaming protocol. As you know, we have Town TV, which airs council meetings live, and then they're held there forever on our website. But we're looking at finding a tool that will be a little bit more accessible, again, with Apple products. The Town TV, people can't always access the live streaming, so we're going to be looking at that for this year. In terms of online engagement and trying to get that 74% up a little bit higher, we're looking for, again, opportunities. We have an idea forum right now that's on our website, but we're looking at how can we reach out more directly on more specific issues, what tools can we use to get people involved in the town. We'll continue to grow the town's online profile. Again, recognizing people want that immediate interaction, so we're responding to that demand. We have, very shortly, we'll be launching a corporate e-newsletter. So we've identified a tool that will allow us to meet the requirements of the anti-spam legislation in terms of having all the systems built in, allowing people to subscribe and unsubscribe. And this will allow us to reach out more directly. Right now we use what's called RSS feeds, so you can subscribe and get all town news releases. You can get all public notices. I mean, you can get all that information to your desktop, but more people are comfortable now with the e-newsletter format, so we're just going to be taking what we have in RSS feeds and making it much more friendly for the public. And last but certainly not least, this year we'll be undertaking another You Matter employee survey, because again, we recognize and certainly the research shows that one of the highest drivers of satisfaction with government overall is the service that they get from the people who work for the town. And so by doing You Matter, it allows us to see the level of engagement of our staff, how committed they are, and our results truly have been astounding in the past, and we're hoping for, again, that we can continue to measure these results and meet the needs of staff as well as the needs of the community. Any questions?
Councillor Elgar?
I appreciate the presentation. I'd like to thank you very much for what we have done. There is one area which I'm just wondering where we're going right now during this term, and it relates to residents sending in an email upset with something that hasn't been corrected. And for whatever reason, and I can understand why, they really assume, in fact, that the councillors are aware of these problems. And I know we resolved the phone call situation, which is really, really helpful. But it's the electronic system coming in where we know nothing about it, of the concerns. And I'm wondering, what are we doing to resolve that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the electronic, so if the emails come in through Service Oakville, where we would be handling them, we can give them a service request number, which would, again, if they share that number with council, it allows you to have access to that information. We don't have any protocol with the town because it would involve sending an email back to people saying, would you like to send that email to your council? We can't do it automatically because of freedom of information and protection of privacy legislation. We can't automatically share information that comes in. So we'll definitely look at it to see what kind of protocol we can address and how we can work on that, but we have to meet the requirements of the legislation.
And I have no problem with meeting the requirements of the legislation because we're bound to do that. Could we then put, when anything is sent to Service Oakville, you put a note that goes back to the person that please note that we do not forward your issues or concerns to your council representatives. And then we could say if they want, like something is really still fundamentally wrong because for whatever reason, and I can understand if I was a constituent, I would think that my councillor knows of this issue that the resident thinks is a huge issue. And we get blindsided. Like by the time they call us finally, they're not happy. And I know nothing about the issue. So there's got to be some kind of a qualifier we can put in that we don't forward anything to the councillors. Please note, they are not aware of anything.
And we can certainly look at that. That's something that we could apply across the organization because obviously a lot of emails don't come in through Service Oakville. They come in directly to individuals. So we'll look at that issue.
I think, like as a counselor, I really feel like I have no idea what the issue is, and they're not pleased with that at all. The other thing is regarding the call center. I like where we're going. Are we piggybacking with what the region is looking at doing also right now with live calling? Has anybody talked to the region at all? Do you know?
I know we are in constant contact with the region. So I'm not familiar with that particular issue, but I'll have staff
and the
look
reason
into it.
I mentioned it at our recent planning session at the region, they mentioned how they are going to outsource it, and it's down in the Niagara area, we'll be live calling, and the response times are supposed to be fantastic with what they do. So I'd really ask that get in touch with the region on this issue.
Yeah, we actually have reached out. Sorry, and now I know what you're doing for the after hours call handling. Yeah.
That's
yeah,
specifically
yeah.
what I'm thinking is the after hours.
Yes, and we have reached out on that issue, and in fact, we're looking, I mean, our hope is actually we'll partner with another municipality that has 24-hour call handling service because they're very familiar with the municipal protocols. So we are looking into that definitely. So
I'll ask you to look at the region
yeah,
too, because
we will.
what they've found is it looks like it's going to be a far better system. Thanks very much for what you're doing.
Okay, Councillor DeMoff, then Robinson, or
Thank you. 2 questions. The web content. I find it, and I've heard from residents who find it challenging, if not impossible, to find reports. So when something comes to council, they're contained in the council minutes, but then to go back and dig out a report that was presented to us a year, 2 years, 10 years ago, it's almost impossible, even with the search function, unless you know the date when that report came. Is there anything being worked on to make it easier to find information on reports that have come to council?
And through you, Mr. Chair, that is, within the website, that is a separate website. We have linked the search function from the town's website through Eames, which is the system that does our website. So I'd have to talk to the clerk's office. I don't know if they're looking at that issue, but we'll look into it and see how we can integrate it. We should be able to look through we have Google Search appliance at the town, so we'll look at how we can integrate that better with past council reports so that they can pop up a little bit earlier when people use the search function.
Yeah, because unless I hold on to a report, when I go back to try and find it, Google
Oh, no, I
search,
totally
the
agree.
Oakville site, and it just,
Yeah.
it's
So we'll look
so
at what we
hard.
can do
Okay.
to address that.
And the second one had to do with the
Maybe Gord can speak to that already.
It's not really speaking directly to the issue, but Eames is coming to the end of its life, and we are looking for alternatives to it. So in that process, we can address your issues. I think everybody who uses the search facility always wishes that it was better, and it will be one of the features that we look for in that process.
Okay, thank you. The after-hours call handling, will that include bylaw? So if someone hears
Yeah.
noise at night or fireworks on a long weekend, because a lot of the complaints that we get is that bylaw isn't working when people are having issues. So I'm just wondering, is that going to tie in with the call handling? And if so, how will it be dealt with?
And through you, Mr. Chair, at this point in time, I know our first round, we were looking at the calls that were handled by Appleby Dispatch, which I don't believe is the bylaw call, so perhaps.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, really you're now getting into the service level within bylaw. We don't run except on a complaint basis, which are usually when we know of an issue that we'll bring people in to respond to it, but we don't have a outside of normal hours standard. So if through the Budget Committee and Council, we'd have to look at how that service would be delivered. It's not part of the current services as delivered by the town. So that's separate from there is no call-out system for bylaw.
So if I pick up the phone and call the town of Oakville at 8 o'clock at night because there's a noise next door, is someone going to answer that call? Is that what the after hours will do?
They'll log that call. If in the knowledge base it's something that would be a police activity or something called, that would be contained in the knowledge base. But if it is just simple noisy neighbors, that may not generate that issue being dealt with that night. It would then go to bylaw the next day. If it's an ongoing, reoccurring issue, then they would plan to deal with that ongoing issue.
Okay, because I can see it being frustrating for a resident to call and have someone answer, and then we're saying to them,
absolutely.
sorry, we can't deal with that tonight. I know I've answered your call, but someone will get in touch with you tomorrow, and meanwhile you've got...
But those things which may be regarded as an emergency, and some of the bylaw may fit into that category, staff can be contacted, but I wouldn't want to give council the impression that we have ongoing people to respond in the evening. As I say, that's a staffing issue, and we'd have to either look at how we redeploy our staff, which may take away from daytime, or to ramp up that service.
Okay, thank you.
And that's certainly something we'd be quite prepared to look at, should that be the direction.
Is that everything, Councillor DeMoff? Okay, Councillor O'Meara and then Councillor Robinson.
Thanks again, Jane, for everything. I'm wondering, and pardon me if it's in there, but when the Polera survey that came out, did we survey residents on our website and what they think of the interface and the usability of our website?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In the Polara survey, we didn't, but we do web reviews regularly. So our last one would have been in 2013 when we did our digital strategy. And you're going to hear more about that in April. We're going to be reporting back from our open data, which sort of covers some of these areas. So we did usability testing. We did actual use testing in 2013.
Okay, and is that, so is that going to form into the actions that, I see we're obviously investing time and resources and money into web content, so is that going to inform sort of how we go forward then as well?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, it will. And actually, again, in the web world, we relaunched in 2012, so we're coming up to, 3 years, so we'll be doing another full review in the next year. So it's constantly evolving. So we get feedback, we constantly respond. So we are doing that. Just a little bit of the focus in the last year to 2 years has been on the accessibility compliance. So that's taken most of our resources. So we'll be responding, and we try to do it on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Robinson, do you have a question? No. Any other questions over here? Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate the information that you've brought to us. We're going to move on to the Community Development Commission now.
Chair and members of the Budget Committee, I am going to be presenting the Community Development Commission and all of the program areas within that commission. Oops. Oh, there it goes. You'll see on this slide each of the program areas that are included within the Community Development Commission, and you can find their details within those tabs that are listed in that area. All of the directors are here in order to answer any questions, more detailed questions you may have following the presentation. This summary slide summarizes the impact on the tax levy from each one of the programs. Overall, the gross operating expenditures for each of the commission programs represents about, at a gross level, 11% of the town as a whole. But as you can see from this chart, a number of the programs have a substantial revenue base, which drops our reliance on the tax levy to about 4% from the gross level of 11%. So just working your way down the chart, there has been minimal increases in both economic development as well as the environmental policy. Economic development had about a 5% increase, mostly as a result of the ambassador program that was added as part of this budget. That had come out of a lot of the mitigation measures that we had put in place for the BIAs. The Strategic Business Support Group is a fairly small area within the overall programs. It has actually a substantial increase in the budget, about 158%, but in dollar-wise, it's about $132,000. And that's a result of that group now supporting the two other departments that were added in 2003 to the overall commission, so the level of support they provide those. But probably most importantly, it's the increase in the GIS resources that we have that supports a lot of the online initiatives, as well as the data analysis we're taking from the GIS component. So there's a substantial increase there. Environmental planning and improvements, there has actually been a decrease. That's as a result of a reorganization that we had done between environmental or infrastructure planning and development engineering. What we had done as part of that reorganization is moved a lot of the permitting functions along the road corridor into development engineering so it could be coordinated with the other permitting functions such as pool enclosures, site alteration. As an applicant or a resident coming in to build something is really going to be applying for those group of permits. So now it's contained within one window, one counter, and we're looking at moving forward on a one permit type of process where you'll come in with several selections of items that you'd be doing, but you'd be doing it under one permit. So it's a little more effective and a little more understandable for the resident. So you can see that there's been a decrease in infrastructure planning and a corresponding increase on development engineering to slide those staff in to create that opportunity. Parking and building services are both at a zero. They're full cost recovery programs, and they're maintained that way through this business into 2015. Planning services has had a substantial decrease in their reliance on the tax levy, and that's as a result of the increase in revenue anticipated in 2015 with the increase in the number of applications in North Oakville, as well as the continued number of applications within the southern part of Oakville. Certainly the revenue has increased, and I think we have a better understanding of the expectations on the revenue, so our projections are coming more in line with what we're actually seeing. So there's been a substantial decrease there. In terms of our accomplishments in 2015, as Jane Courtemanche had outlined, we do have a Vision 2057 initiative that really sets out the 5 to 25-year master plan, and a lot of the work within the program areas in this commission do work under those master plans. So if you look at it in that context, then in the, for example, the Create It category, with the approval of Livable Oakville at the board in 2013, we moved forward with a lot of the implementation elements, and of course the in-zone was probably the most sizable component with the approval of that bylaw in February of 2014. Combined with that was the Livable by Design manual, as well as the Stable Residential Communities. In addition, there was a fair amount of work done on the downtown in 2014. Both the Transportation and Streetscape study and the Cultural Hub study were undertaken. A lot of consultation to really understand how we wanted to move forward in the downtown in those specific areas, mostly around the public realm. And of course, there was the economic analysis that we had done at that time, which has now enabled us to move into the retail, the strategies that we're working on for 2015. Another area was the Midtown. We had completed an environmental assessment for both the transportation and the stormwater in Midtown, and that was finalized in the spring of 2014, and we're moving forward to try and get that finalized through the ministry. So under the 2057 initiatives, those were our major accomplishments for 2014. When you look at it from the strategic plan initiatives, there was 3 of them within the economic environment or enhancement of economic environment. One was the Auto Mayors Summit that was undertaken in 2014 on a fairly extensive work through the economic development officers in terms of supporting that summit and the initiatives for the auto industry. We had our first Innovation Award, which was quite successful. It was on, I think, the winter, the snowiest day we had in the winter, but we still had a fairly good turnout to that award ceremony. And then, of course, there was the Main Street commercial mitigation initiatives that we had undertook, mostly at Council's direction. Some of those are the short-term initiatives that are in place and leading up to some of the mid and longer term, which will come out of the downtown work that's currently underway. And of course, on the environmental sustainability, we have the ongoing implementation of the Health Protection Air Quality Bylaw, with many of those phases coming into place for all the industries within Oakville. And then the Oakville Wildlife Strategy, which certainly was initiated in part because of the coyote issue, but I think we had quite a interesting year with raccoons this year as well. In terms of the key capital projects, of course, the Road Resurfacing and Preservation Program is a major initiative within our infrastructure planning group, and that moved forward. There was about 23 kilometers of road resurfaced as part of that program. Our active transportation program moved out as well, with about 20 kilometers of new cycling facilities provided along our trails and roadways. And you can see the other series of projects that were done either at the design stage or at actually the construction. In terms of the key outcomes for the Commission, our timely delivery of service still continues to meet our target expectations, with the one exception of building permits. We have, in past years, always achieved about a 90 or 95% delivery on that, but in terms of the number of permits coming in through North Oakville, with the allocation coming out a few years ago and the subdivisions being approved, there has been quite an increase in the number of applications, which has been reflected in the revenue. And in addition, we now have 2 bylaws that we're trying to deal with. With the approval of the in-zone bylaw in February, we need to ensure that any applications that come in meet 2 bylaws. So that has certainly slowed down our ability to respond. I think in addition, we've had quite a few staff vacancies. So you will see, and I think in Nancy's presentation, there were some of the gapping positions that are now starting to be filled. I think there's 2 positions within building that are filled in order to resolve that issue. And as we move through with the in-zone bylaw, we hopefully will no longer have the 2 bylaws to review, and that will begin to resolve that. In terms of our cost recovery, we're reaching a full cost recovery for all our fee-based services that are development related, and the same applies in parking. On the customer service, we do undertake a customer service survey each year. This is the 2nd year we've had that in place. We've got a total of about 450 responses, with about 200 in this year. And the responses we're getting are very positive in terms of the service we provide, and also the timeliness in which we provide that service. Public engagements is shown on there as well. And of course, infrastructure improvements, which I think I've pretty well spoken to, have met the targets that we had set out, either substantially or completely met those. Looking forward into 2015, which we're already at now, we of course have the road resurfacing preservation program, which is continuing, and you'll see that material in your budget package, as well as a number of actual construction projects that are happening, and then some engineering design initiatives that are listed on the screen here. For major projects, we're looking again at the downtown, and you already have received the the staff reports on the transportation and streetscape study that you'll be dealing with on Monday. So we're looking forward to the completion of the streetscape study itself, and also then moving into Lakeshore and the redesign of Lakeshore. The Cultural Hub project will be coming to a conclusion in July, where we'll be presenting to you an overall master plan for the cultural facilities for the downtown. The 5-year review will commence in 2015. We're looking at holding a public meeting, which formally commences the official plan review. And of course, that review has many elements to it. It will be looking at our employment commercial lands. It'll be looking at our growth centers to see how they're performing over the past years, and a variety of other issues within that program. The zoning bylaw, we're hoping, is finalized at the Ontario Municipal Board. Recently, we had many parts of the bylaw now in force. There are still some that are left outstanding, so we'll be moving through that through the Ontario Municipal Board process. Stormwater management plan, our phase 1, we expect to have completed in 2015. That portion of that study is just looking at really the state of our infrastructure for stormwater management. The phase 2 will be initiated, with that concluding into 2016. And that one really looks at the modeling of how we can deal with both the pipes itself as well as the overland flow. That'll be an important aspect, particularly when you look at it in light of the climate change challenges that we have. And you'll see a variety of other projects in there related to our heritage resources, our energy plans, and also the Life Science and Technology District that Council had identified in North Oakville around the hospital. Moving that forward in the next couple of months, we expect to be reporting to Council on that. In terms of service enhancements, we are beginning to put together a database or background information that can help us move towards what's happening on my street. So at this point in time, we have building permits that we are currently mapping, so that even a resident could, as we move that program into the website, look and see what was going on their street. So we're collecting the building permit component, committee of adjustment applications, development applications is already available there, but we can also combine that with the capital budget. And I think Nancy Selly had presented as part of the opening presentation some of the work that we had done on our capital budget and mapping that. And so this begins the beginning of that piece that we can put on the website so that residents have much more information of what's going around their neighborhood. The administrative monetary penalties will be put in place. This is very much part of the parking review that Jane Cordemosh had spoken of. The third one is the enhanced permitting solution, and this is what I had referred to before with us putting together the road corridor component that was in infrastructure planning into the development engineering. It allows us to work with Service Oakville, work with online, and our counter function to really coordinate and start to move ourselves towards that one permit for those site-related activities that someone would be coming in to do. So that will be put in place in 2015, at least the beginning of that one permit. And the last one is our fee modeling implementation. We have spent the last year looking at our fee models for all of our development-related applications to ensure we retain that full cost recovery. There has been a number of changes within the staffing models and in legislation, so we need to constantly review that. This was a substantial review. We will be understanding through this year time tracking of all of our activities to calibrate that modeling work that we had done in 2014. So you will see a revised fee structure coming forward by the end of the year that will reflect the work that we had done in 2014 and then the calibration work that we're now doing in 2015. In terms of the major capital projects, this slide is slightly different than I think the one you have in front of you. But the road resurfacing, of course, is a 7.1 million, as well as the other projects that are listed there. I will flag the Rebecca Street bridge work. Initially, the bridge work was in at 1.6 million, I think it was, and then earlier this year there was a report that you had approved of pre-committing another 1.6 for a total of $3.2 million for this project. And that would allow us to go out with the tenders. The tenders are now in, and it's quite over the budget at a 4.4 for the Rebecca Street. So this is a joint project that we're doing with the region as well as the gas utility, and so we'll be consulting with them to see how they're going to be proceeding with the project, and we will be bringing back to you through your how to deal with this budget item. So it's 4.4 in terms of the actual cost from the tenders, but what you currently have in your budget books is about 3.2. So I'll flag that for future deliberations that we'll be looking at to bring to you. There are no new requests within the commission, but in terms of additional reports, you have 2 reports in your package today. One is on the Canadian Open, where we're recommending that we fund our support to that Open through the reserves. And so you'll see that at a cost of $79.5 not million, $790,000. And we're recommending that you continue to fund that. The Open will be coming, and so in order to effectively deal with it in terms of parking and all of the other elements that it brings to the town, it's an expense that we need to consider. The second one that's on there is the cultural heritage landscape, and this was a specific request of council which asked us to look at what we could do in terms of moving our cultural heritage landscapes up. It's currently right now in our package for 2017. Could we deal with this issue earlier in 2015? So we have identified that there was money in the 2017 longer term projections. We'll move that up to 2015. It enables us to commence that program in this year. So that would be funded again through reserves, and that report is in front of you for your consideration. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor O'Meara.
Thanks very much, Jane. I have 2 questions. The first question is with regards to Oakville's BIAs and some kind of support for them. I know we've had discussions about staff sort of having to support the BIAs in various initiatives and support, and how that may be sort of taking away from our staff's their own priorities and initiatives, and I'm wondering what we might be doing, or what we might be, or if we're considering at all sort of more of a formal entrenched role for a sort of a one-stop support base for our BIAs, and through them the businesses that they represent.
Currently, we are looking at what are some of the models that are out there for municipality and BIA's roles, relationships, and how they support the BIAs. So we're looking around at best practices right now, and we expect to bring a report back to you later in the spring into the fall, perhaps, which recommends how we may be able to support and work with the BIAs. So it's a presentation of options to you to consider how you may want to go forward on that.
Thank you. And then lastly, I'm wondering what we do, again, kind of through economic development, what we do in order to market Oakville as a place for business. And you know, we talk a lot about it. We talk about initiatives, but you know, how do we sell ourselves? Are we advertising in The Economist, in Forbes? Like, what is it that, do we have a package of marketing materials that we go out to solicit businesses and tell them why Oakville is the place that they should be setting up their businesses?
There's actually a variety of ways in which we market Oakville, all the way from the calling on businesses in terms of attracting increases or consolidation of their facilities. We also are connected in with the province and the federal government in terms of any businesses that may be coming, where we can provide material on that. We have, through the economic development strategy, identified fairly areas in which we want to target. So we have prepared marketing material related to that. There was an e-brochure that was put together that did that. In fact, this year you'll see, as part of the Economic Development Work Program, which actually comes to you on Monday night, some of the initiatives in terms of the office market to really tag into that. So we have a marketing program. It is a targeted marketing program to try and focus in on the areas that deliver on our economic development strategy. We do also take advantage of some of the advertisements, but really that hasn't been the focus of where we've spent our money on economic development. It has been very focused.
Okay, Councillor Demoff.
Thanks for your presentation, Jane. When are we updating our active transportation master plan? Because it was done in 2009, so it was due to be done last year and wasn't. So I'm just wondering, first of all, when that's scheduled to be updated?
So that work is underway right now. So I would expect to be reporting either at the end of this year or into the early part of 2016.
Okay, because you had mentioned the additional kilometers of bike lanes that we've added, which is fabulous, and we have, and I think all of council is really proud of our active transportation program. But it involves so much more than just the infrastructure. There's policy, there's community outreach, active and safe routes to school, and one thing I've noticed just over the last few years is that the more stuff that we do, the more resources that we need. And when I look at some other communities, they have dedicated staff resources to just cycling and walking, predominantly cycling. I mean, the city of Ajax has committed significant resources to it. So I'm wondering if we could look at, in switching gears, it called for additional staff resources for traffic demand management and active transportation. I'm wondering if we can look at what the cost would be to add additional resources to be able to implement what we're looking at doing in a timely manner. Because I'm concerned that right now we're sort of at a tipping point where we're still able to deliver things, but we're getting close to the point where we could be putting so much on our plate, and the public has an expectation that we're not able to deliver upon. And I'm thinking of things when we put in a new multi-use trail. The amount of work that goes into that seems to be as much as when we do a road. You know, we've got to do an environmental assessment, we have public open houses, and yet we have far fewer staff working on that than we do on our roads. So can we look at what it would cost to add additional resources, whatever that may be, into implementing our active transportation master plan?
Sure, we can. I think it's probably first important for us to recognize the active transportation within the context of switching gears, because the active transportation master plan was done ahead of time, and then we had done the switching gears. So integrating those two closer together and really developing a monitoring program, because we did have fairly aggressive targets in there for both for transit as well as active transportation, and all the TDM initiatives. And to understand, so what is the impact that we're currently having with our existing service level, and then we can look at what would be required in order to increase our ability to achieve those objectives. So I think it's the master plan that sets out what we want to achieve with those targets, and then we can look at what we need in order to be able to accomplish that. So that could very much be part of the active transportation plan.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any others? I have a question for you, just about the report that you presented. If you could go back 2 slides to your major 2015 capital projects. You're talking about the Rebecca Street at 60 Mile Creek Bridge Replacement Project and the need for additional funding to be able to complete that project. Will you report back to us again with material for our consideration at the next set of meetings?
We will.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I had for now. And I think Mayor Burton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Closey, could you describe for the public how our economic development operation interacts with and cooperates with the Region of Halton's economic development operation and the Greater Toronto Marketing Alliance economic development activities?
Certainly. With the region, we fully cooperate with the region. The area directors meet on a regular basis to look at various initiatives. With the region's focus predominantly on the small business, there's a good understanding of where we focus in on our activities and where the region focuses so that we're not duplicating efforts between the two of us. The Greater Toronto Marketing Board, we are not a member. We do not, we only participate through the region, so it is a regional responsibility in terms of coordinating with them. What we do in working with them is if there are sites or prospective clients that are looking to come, we certainly respond to those site selection initiatives that are coming out and provide them the material to demonstrate what we have available here in Oakville for that opportunity.
And could you just give the public in broad strokes, it doesn't have to be to the penny, but approximately the amount of tax money we spend on the Oakville economic development operation and what the spend at the region is for that, and if you know it, the changes that are being talked about at the GTMA, and if you don't, I'll provide that another way.
So our economic development overall expenses here is about $653,000 for total expenses. There's a small amount of revenue that comes in through that. And I'm not aware of the budget of the region's budget for economic development. On the GTMA, I know there's an existing amount. They're certainly looking at restructuring themselves. I think it's about $100,000, maybe $150,000 that they're looking at from the region. But going forward, they are looking for much more money, and you will have more information on that.
That's great. The exciting news in the GTMA is that the federal government and the provincial government have just announced that they're willing to significantly increase their funding for that, and that should take it from a $1 million operation to a $4 million operation. And so there's a lot of hope, I would say, and excitement among the mayors of the GTA at maybe getting critical mass liftoff for that operation. Although it still remains a bit of a concern for me that GTMA is a lead generating operation, and it's my impression that we don't see a lot of leads from the GTMA, and that's another thing but with a trebling of their money, perhaps there'll be a trebling of the chance that we'll see leads from them. Mr. Chair, I wonder if you're aware of the region's economic development budget. Isn't it $1.5 million or $2 million?
I believe it's in that ballpark. I was trying to pull it up while you were speaking, but my connection right now is not working, so
Okay.
I don't want to confirm a number for you.
Well, thank you to everyone for that information. I hope that the public has a better appreciation of how economic development is a priority at every level, ranging from ours to the federal government, and that taken together, and we're working together in a coordinated way, and there's quite a lot of money in the system, and it's increasing.
Okay, any other questions at this time? Okay, I just wanted to raise, this is, I think, an appropriate time to raise the issue of the pavement network performance. I provided to you copies of some material that I had staff put together, which is a range of options for consideration. I don't believe it's appropriate for us to make an initiative this year on this, but I think it's appropriate for us to consider it in the context of the 10-year capital forecast process that we go through coming up in the next year. Do you agree with that from a staff perspective, that the timing in terms of considering this with the other major projects that we're going to be dealing with, stormwater management planning, for example, and the transit review planning that we'll be doing over the next year? If we sent you a direction later on to deal with this in the context of that, would that be appropriate?
Yes, if there are, to you, Mr. Chairman, if there are no impacts in 2015, then it would be appropriate for it to be dealt with through the forecast work.
Yeah, and I say that for a couple of reasons. One, we've already provided guidance in terms of which roads we're going to consider moving forward with this year. We also have significant increases during this term of council already planned for this budget, and I think it's more towards the end of the 10-year capital forecast that we might want to consider changes. So, okay, I think we're done with this component, and we're ready to move on to the Community Services Commission. Thank you very much for the information.
Good morning. I'm very pleased to be presenting the budget for 2015 on behalf of the Community Services Commission. As you can see, our programs and services are all direct services to residents. It includes emergency services, recreation, culture, parks and open space, infrastructure maintenance, and Oakville Transit. And we have a very strong partnership relationship with the Library Board. As you can see, the three main areas for the larger capital or operating budgets are emergency services, Oakville Transit, and infrastructure maintenance. The reasons for our increases are primarily due to collective bargaining agreement requirements and also utilities. Our 2014 accomplishments, we did a tremendous amount of work. We initiated work on the new intelligent transportation system for Oakville Transit. This is a really important project going forward because it will literally transform the customer service experience, which will be very exciting. We've had the first ever Oakville Children's Festival. Our original target for that festival was to have 5,000 people, and we ended up with over 15. It was a huge success, and we already have organizations wanting to be part of the 2015. We also were responsible for implementing the provincial one-call service, which is a one-window service for all locate information, and that went live June 19th, 2014. We also amended the open burning bylaw. As you are probably aware, we had a number of complaints over the last few years from residents who were concerned about excessive smoke from neighborhood recreational fires. We looked at what their concerns were, and we made a recommendation around an amendment that would allow the fire service to actually respond to nuisance calls with respect to excessive smoke. And over the course of the year, we have had nothing but really great feedback from residents who had been expressing strong concerns. And you will be getting a progress report in the next cycle that will highlight what happened with respect to that amendment. We also introduced an Oakville Center for Performing Arts new website, long overdue, and our patrons are really enjoying the more appropriate navigation and the intuitive design. We also opened North Operations Depot and the temporary fire station number 9. We had an open house in September, and over 200 people came from the community. We also did a major redevelopment design for Oakville Arena. This is a really important piece. This came about as a result of extensive consultation with a lot of key stakeholder groups, and everyone was able to come to a major consensus around a preferred model. And I would like at this point to acknowledge the tremendous leadership of Michael Brennan, who worked tirelessly to make this happen. I would be remiss if I did not also identify the ice storm response. As you remember, December 22nd, 2013, we had a devastating ice storm. We have spent the first 6 months of 2014 trying to work through and manage the damage to over 11,000 trees. And I think everyone would agree that the forestry team did a tremendous job in that area. Our culture days made the 3 top 10 provincial lists. We're very proud of that. And the attendance for those culture days increases on an annual basis. To enhance our natural environment, we treated over 4,517 ash trees. We completed phase 2 of the 16-mile Creek West Shore landscape rehabilitation. With our volunteers, we planted over 900 trees and shrubs. And we also did a lot of work around invasive species. We inventoried, treated, and removed large amounts of giant hogweed at Petro-Canada Park and Bronte Bluffs Park. And we also put up signs warning residents of the presence of invasive species in that area. To be accountable, our fleet area did an extensive review using international best practices. They actually use what's known as a vehicle equivalency method that is also used by the American Public Works Association and the U.S. Navy. And Enrico will be speaking further on the outcome of that particular review. We also introduced for the first time a Watch for Bikes campaign in partnership with CAA. And what that meant was that all of our non-emergency vehicles displayed Watch for Bikes stickers, and we also participated in a community education campaign. We also initiated mobile data sharing and an AVL technology project for fire services. This will allow them to track real-time performance of all of their crews. We also entered into a partnership with Sheridan College to enhance trail security on their campus, which was a very hot issue last fall. And I'm pleased to report that all of those mitigation measures are formally in place. And we also renewed the boundary road agreement with the City of Burlington. On the customer satisfaction rate, these are all based on the Polera results that you would have seen last week. As you can see, parks and open space is at 94%, which I think speaks to the long-term investment that councils have made in enhancing green space. The library is at 90%, recreation is at 86%, fire services is at 84%. I wanted to highlight in particular the 74% for roads, winter road and sidewalk maintenance. They went up by 6%. Which is huge if you consider the fact that in 2014, they actually did winter control probably 3 times a week from January 1st to March 31st because we had so many snowstorms. So the fact that they were able to actually be seen as improving service in the eyes of the public during an extreme season, I think really is a testament to how hard those crews worked. And transit services came in at 52%, and I'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. For customer service outputs, we planted over 450 trees on road allowances. We restored another 238 heritage markers in pioneer cemeteries, which is honoring the heritage of Oakville. And we exceeded transit KPI targets on driver courtesy, service reliability, and scheduling. And one piece I think is really exciting is to see the amount of foot traffic going through our recreation centers for 2014. It was 3.93 million visits, and that averages about 11,000 patrons per day. So our recreation centers are in very good use. From an efficiency and effectiveness standpoint, we continue to enjoy an exceptional CVOR safety rating for our fleet and transit drivers. We are considered to be one of the best in the province, and often MTO will refer other municipalities to our team to get advice on how they can improve in this area. The safety of transit services was also demonstrated with only a 2.6 preventable accidents per 100 kilometers of operation. Our paratransit operations also achieved an efficiency target of 2.3 rides per service hour. And also 50% of our recreation centers operated at over 90%, programs operated at over 90%, which is absolutely extraordinary. The average rate across the board is 75%. So I think the recreation team is to be commended. In terms of strategic priority highlights for 2015, You will have noted that transit is sitting at 52%, and there will be a number of initiatives that we'll be undertaking in 2015 to address that particular issue. One of them is the actual introduction of transit accessibility and information improvements. They will go live in September. And I think that our ridership will be very pleased to be receiving real-time information about next bus. Also, we will be able to track on-time performance as well, which will be very important from an operational improvement standpoint. We also will have new tracking capability for fire services to track their on-time performances, and they will have capacity to be able to share data, which they haven't been able to before. This is already in the process of rolling out now and will also be live fully by Q3. The library is going to be introducing new self-serve options, so people will be able to go into the library and check out books through a self-serve function, and they are also doing an overhaul of their website, which will also be more intuitive and easy to navigate. Our EAB program continues to be one of our top priorities. For this year, our primary focus is in the area of tree injections, tree removal, specifically stumping and removal, with the plan that in 2016 we will have a very hard push on tree planting. Forestry also is going to be undertaking an iTree project this year to measure the town tree canopy. If you remember 10 years ago, there was a project called U-Forest, which also measured the tree canopy. We are going to be doing the same thing this year, but we are also going to be working in partnership with the U.S. Forestry Service, and they will be working with us to help with the comparative analysis between where we are in terms of tree canopy right now and where we were 10 years ago. We are also looking at leveraging town assets by looking at usage of current sports fields like baseball fields and looking at whether or not it would be appropriate to convert them into soccer fields, as we have a severe need for that particular amenity. We are also going to be initiating the LED streetlight conversion, and we will be providing coordination and support for the Canadian Open, which we're very proud to do. And we will be continuing our service expansion into North Oakville as growth continues. From a community enhancement standpoint, we are going to be building new tennis courts at Shell Park. Glen Abbey Library is going to be transformed into a new digital hub, which is reflective of the direction in which library services are going right across the country. We are also initiating detailed design for Oakville Arena rehabilitation and a brand new senior center, which will be attached to it. And we are also entering into a very exciting partnership with Sheridan College, where we will be developing a new digital innovation space at QEP. As you can see for 2015, this is going to be a pivotal year for community services, in that we are going to be undertaking massive reviews of many of our service areas, and we will be looking at setting the stage for the next 5 to 10 years and the strategic directions that we want to go in. The transit service review is particularly important to us. The last time it was done was about 5 years ago. A lot has changed in the transit landscape, particularly around GO service improvements and where their priorities are going to be. Our ridership is telling us that we need to improve in terms of frequency of service, so we will definitely be looking at that. We will also be looking at how to best realize the Transit First strategy in North Oakville in a way that is financially sustainable, but provides an excellent service to residents who are moving into that area. And we are also looking at how to leverage the ITS technology. The Fire Master Plan will be refreshed this year in advance of the DC review. The Library Strategic Plan, this is due to come up now. This is probably going to be the most important strategic plan that this library has done since its inception. This is a transformation strategic plan. It will set key directions around the transformation of the library system into digital spaces, and to set the stage for changing technology and emerging trends that they will have to respond to. So that's going to be a very exciting time for them. We are also renewing doing an update on the cultural plan, which is absolutely critical in terms of informing the downtown cultural hub from the standpoint of community development for cultural organizations. We are also undertaking a Harbors Master Plan, which will encompass both the Oakville Harbor and Bronte Harbor. And we will also, as part of that public consultation and work, be looking at what we will be doing in terms of future uses for the Metro Marine building. We are also establishing an age-friendly baseline. This is in response to council direction to look at the possibility of an age-friendly designation. There is criteria that is set by the World Health Organization, and it allows us, if we choose to go in that direction, to look at how we want to go forward as an age-friendly community. And also to complement that, we're also looking at a seniors services review. One of the things that's really becoming quite apparent is that we have different cohorts within the seniors community who have very different tastes in recreation and social activity, and we need to start to look at how to reflect those emerging trends. And we are also undertaking an aquatics review. We are also looking to implement the new Recreation and Culture Strategic Plan. Recreation and Culture has spent a great deal of time in 2014 looking at demographic trends, patterns in emerging recreational taste, also looking at how Oakville is starting to diversify in terms of its population. And they have set an incredibly exciting direction in terms of how they will prepare for changes in recreational needs, particularly from a programming standpoint, so that we continue to maintain the high level of capacity in our programming activities. We are also looking at the implementation of the event strategy, and a report will be coming back to council in early fall. And we continue to do developmental work on the downtown cultural hub from the standpoint of the theater and other cultural activities. Our major 2015 projects are the Uptown Core Memorial Park. This is the first phase in the implementation of the master plan. So this will include rough grading, the servicing piece, the children's playground, and also allotment gardens going in there. We are extending the North Oakville trail system. Trails are an incredibly important amenity for our residents, so we are looking forward to doing that. And we're also extending in South Oakville, 14 Mile Creek and Bronte Creek Trail. We will also be completing phase 3 of the 16-mile West Shore landscape rehabilitation, and we will be replacing the washrooms at Lakeside Park and Forester Park. And we will also be constructing the first neighborhood park in North Oakville, which will be west of 6th Line and north of Dundas. And we will also be doing further Iroquois Ridge Community Center renovations. We have 4 requests that we are putting forward, and we have presentations that we would like to provide to you, which will provide additional information to what's actually in the budget book. The first one is the staffing and contract services for fleet services. This request comes out of the fleet services review, and the request is that it be phased in over 2 years. So I'd now like to ask Enrico to come up and provide that presentation.
Good morning, members of Budget Committee. We have a short presentation that summarizes our new request for fleet operations. So some key facts. Fleet resources have not kept pace with equipment growth. I believe it's been a number of years, 7 or 8 years, since we've last had an increase in staff resources. Our PM schedules, and when I say PM, I refer to preventive maintenance schedules. They have been impacted, which has increased risk to the reliability of our equipment, which in turn impacts our frontline services. So as a result, Fleet has done an operational review in 2014, as Colleen has mentioned, and we've identified some strategies to mitigate this resource demand currently and also in the future years. So this chart just breaks down Fleet's workload by user group. So the two main operations groups, roads and parks, are the biggest users. Sorry. Sorry about that. The two big operations groups are the two big resource draws by Fleet resources. Thank you. Followed by fire and hydro, and then rec and culture. So Fleet's strategic priority is to ensure all assets undergo the appropriate PM activities in order to increase reliability and extend equipment service life, and therefore to do so in the most cost-effective manner. So the data generated from our work order management systems has provided support information in regards to our additional resource requests. So in particular, if we look at the ratio of planned versus corrective maintenance hours, you can see the trend for the past 5 years is in the downward direction. We should be higher on the preventive side, and we're again trending downwards. In the KPI book, in our key performance indicators, our target is a 60-40 split. In the industry, the split is a little bit higher, and I likely attribute that to the industry benchmarks. There's a lot of municipalities that are in the southern region of North America that don't have winter impacts, and winter certainly impacts us on the corrective side of things. Other indicators also show a negative trending. So this results in certainly in increased impact to the reliability of our equipment. So if we look at the on-time completion of scheduled maintenance for our regulated and mandated inspections, we can see a downward trend. Completion of just the preventive maintenance schedules, again, downward trend. And ultimately, the days between work orders have also been decreasing. All trends that are in the wrong direction. So Fleet Management have undertaken a very comprehensive review of the operation to determine areas of mitigation for our resource needs. Using evidence-based analysis, as Colleen had mentioned, we verified the fleet resources, first and foremost, what we currently need. We reviewed our preventive maintenance and corrective programs. We had user group discussions. We evaluated outsourcing options. And we looked at our long-term resource and succession planning needs, as a large portion of our fleet staff will be retiring over the next 5 years. And we also looked at policy revisions. So from our review, several measures to mitigate our resource requirements have been identified. We've adjusted our PM schedules where appropriate for some vehicles from calendar-based to kilometer-driven based. We've been able to reduce our inventory through client discussions in the order of 28 small and large units. We've identified opportunities with our client departments for increased coordination and the use of year-round equipment. We've looked at increased opportunities for outsourcing of preventive maintenance activities, in particular in our heavy-duty equipment, construction equipment, and our smaller tools. We looked at also increasing the authority of the fleet manager, in particular in the enforcement of retirement of vehicles and equipment, and also introducing another layer of approvals for replacement and growth requests. So these measures help to reduce our resource requirements, but they did not eliminate them. So the net result is that we require additional staff and contract resources, and as Colin mentioned, this is phased over 2 years. A service person the first year and a part-time apprentice the following year, and then with additional contract resources phased over 15 and 16. In addition to that, to accommodate future growth, we've identified 0.25 part-time staffing increases, and we're recommending that this is done on an annual basis to accommodate fleet's needs over the next 10 years. So without these resources, I just want to emphasize, I don't think that we can change the downward trend in our key performance indicators. And this definitely will impact the reliability of our equipment, and in particular frontline services. And frontline services, when I speak to that, I speak to our hydro equipment, our fire equipment, our forestry aerials, our traffic aerials, and of course our winter response equipment. So that's the end of my presentation. Be happy to answer questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor Elgar?
Yeah, thank you very much for your presentation. Contract services, I'm just wondering, have we looked at outsourcing more for contract service for specialized areas? And specifically what you're saying, any place where it is truly specialized, like your fire, your hydro, or any other huge equipment?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do actually contract out a fair amount for certain areas in vehicle maintenance, such as transmission rehauls, engine rehauls, certain types of services. There is a bit of a risk when we start to contract out even more, and especially in that frontline equipment. Generally, we can see when we do contract out, some of the vendors are not local, so that equipment can be out of service for minimum a week, perhaps two to 3 weeks. And we don't have spare equipment in some of those frontline services either, so it's critical that we were able to do that in-house, and we're able to then put that equipment back in service as soon as possible.
So our mechanic staff are absolutely qualified to deal with all the hydraulics and everything on all of this equipment?
That is correct.
Okay. Have we looked at outsourcing some of the small things that anyone can do?
To you, Mr. Chair, yes, we have, and that is actually one of the recommendations that came out of the Fleet Resources review. We will be outsourcing the preventive maintenance on these smaller tools, on a specific area of smaller tools, not in its entirety.
So small tools we're looking at outsourcing to the extent possible.
Right. In particular, line trimmers, yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Any others? Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation. Councillor Elgar?
It might, just because of the time of year it is, and it's a capital issue, it has to do with our snow plowing equipment of sidewalks. We have changed over from articulating snow plows to small tractors, which absolutely do not negotiate the corners on any sidewalks at all, which allows for an awful lot of sod damage and complaints. Will we be switching back to articulating machinery so that in fact we don't have the damage that is being caused by what is currently being purchased and put on the streets?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have certainly identified that some of the equipment that we have in our sidewalk maintenance has higher performance and better capability to stay on track, so to speak, than others. Timely you asked that question. We're actually retendering a majority of our sidewalk contract services, and We are hopeful that that we're going to be moving towards a trackless type of equipment versus a tractor type of equipment that will improve the performance of sidewalk maintenance.
Really appreciate that, because I know, I watch what they're driving, and I know that they can't negotiate the corners themselves. It's not their fault. I think they're taking a lot of abuse, the drivers themselves on the vehicle, so I appreciate that we're looking at that. Thank you.
There's no member of council who knows tractors better than you. The guy who runs a farm knows tractors. Thank you very much for the information. Could we have your presentation, please, circulated to members of the Budget Committee as well as to the other members of council, please? I think it would be important for them to see that material, to allow them to understand what and why we're doing what we're doing.
No problem.
Okay, thank you.
The second new request is from Recreation and Culture, and it's in the area specifically of facility booking. While I asked Nina to come up, I would like to highlight the fact that the last time that this group received any additional staff was in 2007, and it was a conversion from part-time to full-time. Good morning. New request?
I think I lost it here. Hold on a sec. Did I lose it? Can't find that. My apologies. There we go. Thank you.
Use the arrows to advance through.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of committee. I will be doing just a brief presentation on the request from the Recreation and Culture Department, and that request is a conversion of a part-time person, a 24-hour position, to a full-time position in the permitting and scheduling unit of our department. So there are a number of reasons that we are making this request. They are as follows. First of all, there's a significant increase in the volume of facility bookings. I don't think I need to go over detail the increases in the facilities that the municipality has constructed over the years. But just as a reminder, this unit also does the booking and scheduling for outdoor facilities, the fields, the parks, etc., town hall, as well as the Board of Education facilities through our reciprocal agreement with the two boards. Second, we have a very high staff turnover in an existing part-time position. There's also a lengthy training cycle that is required. And finally, we're having difficulty in meeting our customer expectations. And I will speak to these each individually. So what you have in front of you are three measures that indicate the change in this unit. As Commissioner Bell noted, the last time that we had an increase in our positions and our staffing to this section was in 2007. And since that time, there has been quite significant change. First of all, in terms of the permits issued, that has increased by a full third. And while a permit actually may have a number of different facilities attached to it. As an example, minor hockey season permit is one permit, and that permit covers 13 different facilities, 7 days a week for 28 weeks. So they're complicated permits. The second measure is the increase in the permit amendments, and these are changes to all the permits. And this actually, in many ways, is much more complicated and more time-consuming than the issuing of the original permit. Certainly, our customer expectations are quite high, and and they do expect very fast turnaround time. The process of making a change may seem simple. A group may want to change or cancel an hour of ice, but we need to confirm with that individual that they are in fact canceling that hour of ice, and we need to have them confirm to us and sign the documents as well, as these are all tied to the billing process. So the amendment process is actually quite complex. And then finally, the increase in bookable spaces. As I noted, we've had a huge increase in the number of facilities. We have 70% increase in bookable spaces since 2007. I also would like to just note that we have, this section also provides a lot of support to community events. Again, it's often not just a simple permit of needing a park for a couple of hours. The staff spend time with the individual, particularly if they have special requirements such as picnic tables, garbage, road closures, etc. The second issue that we face is the staff turnover and the training. As I noted, this is currently a part-time position, and the individuals that we hire are ambitious to have full-time jobs, and many of them do. So on average, we have a turnover of three times a year. There are new people doing this position. And coupled with that, of course, is the training issue. And because this is a seasonal type of, or seasonal requirements, the processes may be the same, but there are special requirements when it comes to booking outdoor space as compared to indoor space or Board of Ed space. So it takes up to 6 months to fully train an individual to be able to understand all of the nuances of the seasonal requirements. So over the last few years, we virtually at no time do we have a staff component that is fully qualified and fully up to speed, because we have this constant changeover and a long training schedule. And consequently, we also have very inconsistent level of service to our customers. And the final reason is our customer expectations. Jane Cordemanche spoke earlier about customer expectations and citizen expectations, and they certainly are increasing, and they do expect a faster level of service, an improved level of service, and customized level of service as well. And frankly, with our current strained staff resources, we're finding ourselves spending an awful lot of time dealing with just the volume and putting out fires as we need to. And the time that we would like to devote to improving our services and addressing the training needs and so on, we are unable to do at this point in time. So in summary, and that is the end of the presentation, but in summary, we believe that this is an important position, or a conversion rather, from part-time to full-time, and we certainly do. We don't see any improvement in the volume. In fact, we do anticipate continued ongoing pressure. Every year there are more facilities coming online or conversion of facilities, so we will see this trend going forward. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Okay, Mayor Burton.
Thank you very much for bringing this forward. I'm going to support this, and if the committee will support it and if council will support it, we'll make a whole lot of our residents a lot happier. Thank you very much.
Councillor DeMoff.
Thank you, and I agree with the mayor. I'm fully supportive of this, and as a community event organizer, I deal with the facility booking staff on a fairly regular basis, and I commend them for what they do. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I am curious. This seems like such a no-brainer. Why wouldn't it just be part of the budget? Why are we even looking at it as a new request?
I believe the reason is that it has implications on the FTE count.
Okay. Because I fully support it. I notice in other areas where there's been new staff added and it's not been put to us as a new budget request.
I think you find there's two ways that positions come forward. There's positions that come forward gradually as they've grown out of capital. So we put in a new park, and when we put the capital budget forward, we look forward to saying that we will require a position to cut the lawns in the park. When it's not connected to a capital position, it becomes just a new service level. And all new service level FTEs come to council. The head count is very important, and we bring them all forward to you if they come out of that domain.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and we are having some discussions with our staff about which FTEs have to come to committee and council and which ones should be part of the base budget process. Okay, any other questions on this particular matter? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. If, again, we can circulate that, I think that would be helpful. All right.
The
And
third new request?
I'm sorry?
We have 4 requests.
Yeah, so
Okay.
continue then.
So the third new request is actually a service improvement in terms of service levels, and that's the Widrow program. I'm going to ask Enrico to come forward. The reason why this has come forward is because of all of our complaints that we get from residents about the Widrow program. 60% of the complaints are tied to service level. So we wanted to take a look at what we could do about that.
Hello again. Just have a short presentation summarizing this service level improvement for the Seniors Window Program. So the program itself has been in place since 2008 to 2009 as a permanent program. I believe prior to that we had a pilot for about 3 years. It is limited to senior citizens and those physically challenged. The current fee is $85 plus HST, which is the $96.05 that you see there. The net budget is around $23,000. The participation in this program has ranged, probably in line with the type of winter weather that we've experienced. Currently, we have slightly over 400 registrants for the current winter season. Our actual budget allots for 400 registrants. And we've done a little bit of homework. The cost for a resident, and again, this depends on driveway size, but the typical cost for a resident to have their entire driveway cleared is in the order of $400, $600 per season. We also took a look at our municipal neighbors. So as a comparison, Mississauga, they have a very similar window program at the same service level actually, and their service fee, depending on your financial ability, ranges anywhere from $0 free to about $200 a driveway, and that's maxed out at $300. Burlington's program, again the same service level, is $51 per driveway, and that's maxed at 150 registrants. And then Milton has the same windrow removal program, and that's $50, and that's maxed out at 50 registrants. So the current service level is to clear windrows within 12 hours after the road's been plowed, and as Colin has mentioned, people tend to confuse when the 12 hours starts, but it is after the road's been plowed, not after the snow stopped falling. The current service level, I believe, has deterred our program from increasing further than the 400 odd registrants. And almost 60% of our calls and inquiries do relate to this service level. So we believe that it would be a great improvement to establish a new service level to clear windrows within 6 hours after the road's been plowed, and the budget impact for this is $50,000. So obviously we always have the one option of just keep things status quo. Second option is to change the service level, as mentioned, without a budget impact. And if we did throw that budget impact entirely on the user, we'd be looking at over $200 for per driveway program fee. It is our recommendation to improve the program in line with expectations. So in that, in the end, will reduce our inquiries and complaints and increase program satisfaction. So our recommended option is to increase the program budget by $50,000 and keep the registration fee as is. That's the end of the presentation. Be happy to answer questions.
Mayor Burton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing the recommendation forward. This would indeed, I believe, increase satisfaction with our service. Did you model what the impact would be if on the budget, or on expenditure, if as a result of it being more attractive, more people took us up on the service?
It would actually be a bigger budget impact because each windrow is subsidized by the net tax levy. So I believe that's why other municipalities have chosen to cap the number of registrants.
All right, but you're not proposing a cap?
No, I'm not.
Okay, and just so we have some context, I know in the past, several times I believe, council has asked for reports on what it would cost to avoid creating windrows for everybody with the magic device everyone believes exists that would, operate a gate at the end of the plow as it went by the street. And the primary driver against that has been, as I recall, that it would slow down our operation and take longer to clear the streets. Do you, for context though, for contrast for people, can you remind everyone what that would cost?
So that service would actually involve, in order to not impact the current service level to plow local roads, that service would actually involve a secondary unit that would follow in behind the main road plow. And so town-wide, we haven't done the recent analysis, but we believe it's in excess of $2 million.
All right, and do you believe that there are sufficient vehicles available to do that in the first place?
The equipment that others have utilized, some agencies that have it in select areas of their municipality. That equipment is actually specialized, and so it would likely take several months, maybe close to 3/4 of a year, to actually have that equipment manufactured. So most of it does not exist.
So it's not a question of trying to find a supply of this equipment in the market. It's a question of actually adding such equipment to our own fleet?
Through Mr. Yes, we would have to add the equipment through contract services.
Well, for those and other reasons, that's why I'll support this. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar?
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, Enrico. You're overachieving in some cases. I had complaints for the snow plow for the windrow came before the plow came, and people were upset. Have you had many complaints about that yourself?
So, not to my knowledge. The way the service is sort of rolled out is it's rolled out on a zone basis, and so when we're towards the end of plowing town-wide, that's when we would actually dispatch that service. There may be occasions where the contractor knows or that does the windrow removal that he has to go out and do it, and he may have time constraints, so he might proactively go out there prior to us actually giving him the go-ahead.
Okay, so like if the resident, then they could call and he would come back again, the way it's supposed to work then?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes. If we had that occurring, the resident would just need to contact us through Service Oakville, and we will redo the windrow. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, first I'd heard it was this year where we had overachievement.
Councillor Demoff, I think you had a question.
Thanks for your report, and thanks for bringing this forward. I too have had calls from residents who feel that the 12 hours is too long, and I do support going to the shorter time frame. I am curious, how does Mississauga determine the financial ability to pay? Because I find that an interesting concept, except that sometimes administering something like that can end up costing you more than if you were just charging a flat fee.
Through you, Mr. Kirk, yes, correct. We believe it is administratively, it is onerous. There's an application process, and you'd have to disclose your financial information, and then, so there's a threshold that you would have to meet.
Okay, and I guess looking at adding additional user fees to that, then you'd be opening a whole other world of problems for some seniors, especially going from 50 to 200. But even if we were to increase it by $10 or $15, it may not seem a lot to some people, but to a senior on a fixed income with their taxes going up can seem like a lot. So anyway, I'm very supportive of what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Amir?
So currently we have 400 people who use this program, is that correct?
Correct.
And how many complaints did we get out of those 400?
I believe they range in the order of 15% on average this year.
Okay, and out of those 15%, 60% were due to service delays? Or sorry, were with regards to the...
I think the 15%, just hold on, bear with me 1 second.
Can you get a calculator? So what's the math on that? Jesus. I don't know how to work that. Let me just use this one. So 400 times 0.15 is 60 people times 0.6 equals, so 36 people were complaining. Oh, I know.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I believe the number to date is around between 40 and 50 inquiries on the whole for the year to date. And so of that, I believe that it's 15, so that is actually more than the 20%. So I believe it's 15 to 20% of the total registrants. That's strictly the service level issue.
Okay, you see where I'm going here. I'm just trying to figure out the number of people that this was an issue for. And we're going to put $50,000 at it for 30 people, 40 people who said that it's not happening quick enough. So my question is in your opinion, is there any amount of time that you believe will be quick enough for some? I mean, some of these people will just complain because that's just in their DNA. And some of these people, it will never be quick enough. So I would just heed caution at you know, putting $50,000 towards something. And if we can reach those service levels, great. But, you know, are we going to come back 2 years from now and well, it's still not quick enough and we want it 3 hours later? I'm wondering what we're trying to, you know, I just want to know how big the scope is of the problem that we face.
So through you, Mr. Chair, yes. So so of the 40 to 50, so around 30 to 40, you're correct, Councillor. That is strictly related to the service level. So the 12 hours after the plow goes through. So the feedback that we have is that it does affect you know, our seniors and with their mobility issues. So for them, the feedback that we're getting is that this would be a huge relief to them to have that windrow removed earlier than later.
Mr. Green?
Fair enough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess there's always that issue of the fiscal and the social responsibility, and it's always a conundrum. And I think when you look at the winter control, first of all, you look at a storm can last 5 to 10, 15 hours when you're into a plowing event. And then we plow all the regular streets, or the major roads, which can take another 4 to 6 hours. And then we get into local streets, which, when there's any amount of snow, takes about another 24. You add 12 to it, and if you're a shut-in of a senior, you now could be waiting upwards of about almost 48 hours. So it is difficult. So it's not just the 12, it's the 24 that precede that, the 5 to 6 hours to do the major roads, and the duration of the storm. So it is a conundrum, but I think when you look at, we know when we first started this program, which I recall being involved in it, you know, that 12 hours sounded pretty good when you weren't getting it cleared, but those expectations do. You'll never meet everybody, because there will be the person, as Councillor Elgar was referring to, that would like to see the second plow there immediately, or the mayor, sorry, was referring to. Certainly don't want to precede it. No, I'm not sure there's an easy answer. But when you look at the dollar value involved and the number of seniors that are getting out that quicker, there's value to it, but it's a fiscal and a social discussion.
Councillor Mira, are you satisfied with that? Okay. Enrico, can you tell us, we've got 400 people in the program, give or take, and this is a program that's taken out the windrow. How are they plowing the rest of the driveway? Do we know what our clients are doing for the rest? I mean, if they're complaining about being shut in because of the windrow, what are they doing for the rest of the driveway?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we don't have that data, but it is likely that they are plowing the rest of their driveway through other means, not through a contracted service, because if they did have a contracted service for the driveway, then that would include the windrow removal.
So somehow these individuals are finding resources to do the rest of the driveway, but are unable or unwilling to do the windrow. That's basically what we're talking about here.
So through Mr. Yes, correct. And so obviously the windrow is the most difficult part of the clearing of a driveway. So.
Right.
I don't know what it is, but boy, when we get into roads and winter control, it just makes me always want to get up. The issue, I mean, again, when you look at the issue of windrows, it's not always about clearing the 3 to 4 or 5 inches that you have on your driveway. What it is, it's the windrow that has been somewhat pickled with salt, brought up, mounted in front of the driveway. You get a bit of a freeze. So I think a lot of seniors will either drive over their packed snow on the driveway, or they'll piddle around to move it, or some will hire. But it's the windrow. It's the material that comes off the road. And I got news for you, whatever night that was this week. I was thinking to myself, maybe I should add this to be number 401. Because I would have loved a lot of help with the windrow, because it is difficult. So that's what we're trying to help with, is that difficult part of the snow. Most will deal with. Even my good old mother in Ajax will deal with that little bit of snow down through the driveway. In fact, for an 82-year-old with Alzheimer's, I'm amazed at how well she does. But the windrow, that's a different one to tackle.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. I think we've exhausted our questions for you guys. Next.
The final new request is from Fire Services, and it's in regard to a fire fit tower for training purposes. The highlight of this particular request is that it is cost shared with the community.
All right, somebody help me here. What's it telling me? What's it telling me to do down here?
You should be able to see it.
Okay. What's it doing now? No. I don't know. Well, I got somebody else's PowerPoint still here, so.
You're,
That's the end.
okay. Why is it at the end? There you go, there's the front. Some challenges.
There we are.
Good morning, Budget Committee. I'm here to speak to you today about a new additional training aid for our training center. And normally, as was mentioned earlier, when we require new equipment at our training campus, and it is for the training of our firefighters, we proceed through the normal capital budget process and administratively and bring it forward from that side of the budget process. In this case, this particular item I would classify as a nice to have. I'm going to give you a lot of reasons why it's going to be a big improvement to our training center. But from the standpoint that it is nice to have, we've taken a unique approach involving our firefighters. The request for this has actually come from the ad hoc enthusiasm of our firefighters to participate in a nationwide physical fitness challenge and being extremely successful. So I'm going to take you through this. Of course, I asked our training division to give me a list of all the reasons why we need this, and you can see it's extensive, but it all falls into really one category. A number of years ago, we were provided with a state-of-the-art training facility, and on that facility is a large concrete burn tower, which does have stairwells inside it, which are intended to replicate the stair towers you would find in a high-rise apartment building. They're quite dark, the floors are concrete, they're slippery, there's a handrail only on one side, and the building is used on a regular basis for our firefighters to do live fire training, which involves actually setting fires in rooms. The tower is quite full of smoke and soot and so on, and while it's being used for that purpose, it can't be used for anything else. So we can't use the stairways or the roof balconies for our aerial training because of the smoke that's already emanating from that other type of training, and several days of cleaning and decontamination after a series of live fire burning before we can use the tower. So what you're seeing here is a list of all the things that could be going on concurrently while we were doing live fire training with our other crews that are on site, or when we're training recruits in particular. We now, through council's actions in the past few years, have a number of fire training officers, so we can be doing multiple evolutions at the same time, and that is where this would come into play particularly. It would allow us to be doing both of these things. But this was all driven by an unusual amount of success, I would say, and a commitment from our firefighters. And there's a long list of accomplishments, but I would take you to just this year. We have been extremely successful at the national level. We have a gold for male over 40. We have a 7th overall and an 8th overall. We've got the fastest rookie time of the year and 2nd place for the overall team across Canada. And actually our members went and competed in the world competitions and came away with 2 golds and were the 8th team overall in the world. Now, when you consider you're competing with people like Phoenix, Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas, Perth, Australia, that's quite an achievement for a small community like ours. And you'll see that we've had 37 Oakville firefighters, almost a quarter of the department, that are fully involved in this training process. That doesn't mean we have many who participate, assist the team, and actually improve their fitness levels, but 37 that truly follow the program all the way through and do the training. And of course, this has got a lot of public exposure. You've perhaps seen Oakville Fire Department being showcased on breakfast television. Come out and watch this. It's actually filmed and broadcast on the TSN every year for the Canadian Nationals. Oakville is always out front with that. And as you know, we have a very effective fire prevention kickoff every year. And this would be a huge additional way that we can involve the community in doing mock demonstrations of this and allowing them to participate. Over the years, we've generated a number of community partners for our firefighters for this event. and I've listed a few of them here, but in particular in the last year, with the success of our teams, and considering the fact that they've never been able to train in the competitive environment where there's parallel stairways and two groups running at the same time competing against each other, which you can imagine increases the effort that each individual puts in, brought forward the decision that we should be endeavoring to get this project. And when I reviewed it with the team, I said, this is a nice to have. We need to have an innovative approach to getting this put on site. And before I would be prepared to come to council, I would like to see at least half of this project funded through your fundraising efforts and your ability to involve the community. And in fact, this year we achieved that goal, and that's why that's projects before you, and why it's before you in this way, because I think it needs a unique consideration. And quite frankly, I'm very pleased to showcase to the community what we've done. And I guess last, the old phrase of build it, they will come. We do believe our team will be even more successful. We think we'll further be able to improve our commitment to physical fitness with our firefighters, which is absolutely critical in injury prevention. And it certainly has been and will continue to be a morale builder for us. And we'd like to be able to use it to do some charity fundraising events and do community challenges with this Fire Fit competition and interact similar to the big bike event and actually do some fundraising with it. So that's our presentation this morning.
Thank you, Mayor Burton.
Thank you very much for bringing the proposal forward and for bringing it forward in this way. It's not just a enhancement to the fitness of our fire department and the morale of our fire department, but of the community too, because of the involvement. I regard this as yet another and a new way that our fire department is very proud making, and I believe the community would be very happy for us to support this, and I will. Thank you.
Any others? Councillor DeMoss.
Well, I just wanted to say Councillor Adams and I made an attempt, a very feeble attempt, I might say, at the Fire Fit Challenge a few years ago when Breakfast Television was out here. So I think both of us have a good sense of, well, I was a feeble attempt. I won't speak for you. But we have a good sense of what's involved with it. And having seen the benefits that it can bring to the community, I think this would just be a fabulous addition. And the way it's been funded by the firefighters themselves and community partners is a real testament to how to get something like this done when it is a nice to have as opposed to we need to have it. So I commend the department for the way they've brought this forward, and I'm really pleased to see it here.
Councillor Elgar.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You didn't need to sell us hard on this one. It's pretty simple. Any chance you can get that added to the Pan Am Games event going forward?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have been the gold star winner at the competitions. It was a pretty tough thing to do. Okay, I don't think there's any other questions. And then thank you very much. Appreciate that. And I think we're on to the additional reports component now.
Here, I think I'm blocking it. There we go. I don't know which one it is.
It's
Okay, yeah, I did get it.
Can I ask, we have a number of presentations on the additional reports, do we not? I'm going to suggest that we take a recess now, and we'll come back and finish up with that, and then I think we'll be ready to move on with the day then at that point. So I'm going to call a 15-minute recess. It's 11:35 now. Let's be back in here at 11:50, and if somebody needs to grab a quick bite, then that's great, and we can move on through lunch. I'd say we probably have another hour's worth of discussion. Okay?
okay, so we're right down to.
Okay, we are going to reconvene. We've got two members who are going to be back in shortly, I think. And I wanted to let you know that the presentations that we do have are basically material that's straight out of the reports. So I'm not sure if there's any true value in having those. If either of you would like to see them, let us know and we'll proceed, but otherwise, let's go straight to questions. So, Councillor Demoff, I know you said that you had some questions about some of these reports, and have a free hand to ask away.
Thank you. I just need to get myself reorganized here. So the first one had to do with the caravan service report that we got. And one of the things I noticed, actually it wasn't in here, but between 2008 2013, the cost went, I guess, from $687 to $1.5 million, which is a huge, it's in the writing, but I just added it to the chart. It's just, it's a huge burden to our transit service. And I notice in here that it says Halton Region is the only regional municipality in the GTHA that does not fund specialized service. So I'm starting to think that perhaps when we looked at the rates and fees, I had suggested that we ask the province to provide funding for this because they legislate it, and I certainly still feel that way. But I'm wondering if we wouldn't be wise to be calling on the region to be providing some funding for this. Do you have any more information on how it works in the other regions in terms of funding?
I'm going to call upon the Director of Transit for that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, good morning. In Durham and York region, they fund and operate specialized transit. In Peel region, both Brampton and Mississauga or My Way Transit operate conventional transit, the individual municipalities, but the region of Peel both operates and funds the specialized transit branded as Peel TransHelp. In Halton, Oakville, Burlington, and Milton all operate and fund their own specialized transit systems.
So obviously we don't have a regional transit system in Halton, but I know you've done work just recently, or you're starting to do work with Burlington combining services. Would there be an ability for us or one of the municipalities to take on the operational side to have it funded by the region? Or would that even be feasible?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's certainly feasible for a consolidation of specialized transit services on some level, and funding from the region obviously is a regional decision, but were they to do that, we could certainly operate it on their behalf. We have the capacity.
Even for the other municipalities, not just for Oakville, or you'd be operating it for Oakville and Burlington would operate it for their?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, there's a number of different models that present themselves, and at this point in time, it's really just a situation where we're operating it off of the Oakville tax levy for Oakville, as is Milton, as is Burlington, and this is unique in the GTA.
Okay.
Mr.
Sorry,
Green?
I did.
Sorry, I think Mr. Green had some additional information about that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think one thing to keep in mind with respect to services which may be shifted to the region, we as the largest assessment in Halton still have the lion's share. So in some cases, yes, you may shift a service to the region. It may then end up actually getting enlarged at the region. For example, Halton Hills does not have it, but if it was a regional service. So you do have to look at pluses and minuses, but we are actually, as CAOs, entering into some discussions about what transit services should be considered on a regional little r, not necessarily the big R, but on that. So this is a discussion we are having, but part of that discussion also needs to look at, again, the source of funding. You may move it to the region, but there's also an impact on the area municipalities in terms of our assessed value.
Okay. Thank you for that. And my other question was more, actually, I don't know whether Colleen or Barry can answer this. It has to do with the transit service to the hospital. And I like what you're doing with, in terms of the delivery and everything, but how, sorry. There was a comment made in here, the location of the new hospital relative to those caravan customers who access its services will impact on trip length, further lengthening the time per trip. I'm just wondering, what impact is that going to have, since caravan is already having such a, it's costing us more and more money every year because of users. What's the dollar impact on these longer trips to get to the hospital? So we're at 1.5 million now. Is that going to increase because of the duration and the time?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That report also contains a recommendation as a means of mitigating the additional costs associated with increased trip length, not only to the hospital, but to the expanded service area for caravan. If we are able to act on the recommendation in that report, wherein we reallocate funding associated with Route 5A, and then in conjunction with that, introduce a couple of innovative new service delivery strategies, we're able to not only do this with existing resources, but we can expand the service area, increase cost recovery rate for specialized transit, decrease the cost per ride, all within our existing budget.
Okay. And my last question was, you mentioned conventional services starts in early 2016. When do the employees start at the hospital? We're going to be starting conventional service for when patients are there, but not for when employees are there. Is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct. We anticipate staff starting to arrive through the summer. They'll be working through summer, fall, with patients, I believe, being transferred approximately mid-December.
So if you were working at the hospital and taking transit, where would you be, like how would you be getting to the hospital then? And where, because they wanted on-site transit stops, so where are you, what's the process going to be for an employee for those 6 or 8 months before their service?
So through the end of 2015, we would be, anyone wishing to access the hospital would be able to do so on either Route 3, Third Line, which would stop at the intersection of Third Line and Dundas, or via Route 5, Dundas, which would stop directly in front of the hospital going westbound and at the intersection of Third Line going eastbound.
Okay. Did we give any consideration to starting it sooner, or was it?
To provide on-site service to the hospital would require an extension of Route 3. We have provision on site for 3 stop locations. We have the routing plan through the hospital, but the cost associated with extending the service simply wasn't an option available to us within our funding envelope.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Elgar.
Thank you very much. I missed your presentation. I had another issue I had to deal with, but.
Councillor Elgar and Mayor Burton, we skipped the presentations on the basis of there's nothing new in them other than what's in the report. So we went straight to questions on any of those items that are on the additional reports list there.
I thank you.
Okay.
We weren't that bad after all. So just with the transit, I tell you, it is probably one of the issues get some of the most comments on. And I notice in the key outcomes, transit services 52%, pretty low. But I think people have to, we really need to educate the public on transit services and how much we are subsidizing it today and why we have to subsidize it today. And like, I'm wondering, with the $17 million that we are subsidizing through the tax base, why is that happening?
Through you, Mr. Chair, subsidy for transit happens in every single municipality. There isn't a transit service provider anywhere that operates at a full cost recovery. And for a transit system our size, a municipality our size, cost recovery rate in the low 30% is generally considered to be good.
But that is because provincially, through the Development Charges Act, we do everything on costing based on the average over the 10-year rear view mirror, correct?
That is one of the contributors.
So if that wasn't in the Development Charges Act and we could fully charge for the cost of growth, how much would that impact the taxpayer that wouldn't have to pay this amount of money?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have numbers that would.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the DCs, I mean, that really deals the majority of capital and expansion capital. It does not assist in the area of operating costs. None of the DCs actually deal with operating costs. So the expansion into the new areas is not affected by the DC from an operating point of view. And so increased DCs would not affect that 17 million that is currently in the operating subsidy. As Mr. Cole has mentioned, when you look at the various transit services for a small to medium size is really where we are, and I think we're at about the 32% RC ratio across all the routes. That's fairly typical. I think when you move into Mississauga, closer to the TC and their connections there, I believe they're at the very low 50s in Mississauga, and then TTC operates, I believe, at about 85%. So that gives you an idea of typically where the spread is in terms of subsidy. I mean, one would argue in the case of roads, we subsidize everybody with respect to driving your car. Yes, you pay your gas, yes, and there's a tax that goes with it, but if you look at the tax levy or our provincial taxes that go into roads and bridges and that, one would argue that is also subsidized. If you look at the environmental damage that's caused by car traffic, and that's one of the pleas why people need to consider transit. So there is a balance. Anyways, I'll stop there.
No, actually, that's good where you're going, because, so with regard to development charges and growth, what are we subsidizing every year?
The purchase of buses, equipment, I think the shelters are included in DCs, so it's capital purchases that are paid for through DCs. Now, you are capped when you talk about in terms of level of service. You have to look at your past, regardless of what your growth is on the go forward. You have a 10-year, because it's considered a soft service, you have to look in the rear view mirror at your 10-year service level, average it, that's what you can plan. So if your growth in service over the last 10 years has been, say, 3% or at 4%, yet your actual growth going forward is at 5 or 6, you are capped in the go forward for a period of time.
Which is
so
exactly...
you're always in arrears in the case of a soft service like transit.
Okay, now you're getting to my point. Well, how much are we subsidizing growth with regard to transit? Like, could we, if we don't know now, I'd be curious to have the number, like at our meeting, with not just, like, transit is the one that stands out because people are saying, all I see are empty buses. The other side is we don't have any service west of Bronte Road, and the service level we would require.
And in part, that is due to the caps on. In fact, if there wasn't the cap on transit, we would probably look at expanding in terms of the actual equipment side at a much quicker rate. So there is that cap that actually limits our ability to expand transit, because otherwise you would be using tax dollars for that capital.
We made a decision last term or term before that we were going to try to increase our level of service to the public with regard to the transit services required, and we took as a council took a stand. We are going to spend the money and do it. And I guess I'm looking at...
And those were within the existing service areas that we made those commitments, as opposed to expansion into new growth areas.
Right. So what is can we get the number of what it is costing us to subsidize this type of we
we
are
can
doing?
look at
Do
trying
we
to
ha-
give
Or maybe
a
we already
breakdown.
know. Yeah, do
Well,
we know?
we'll give a breakdown between what is contributed towards existing expansion of service in existing areas versus expansion into growth-related. We can work on that and have that for the next budget committee.
That'd be good, because the level of service, which, you know, which the 10-year review looking backwards isn't at all where we're trying to go, I don't believe. So
No,
we end up.
we have been improving service within the existing area to capture riders from the existing homes as well.
Right, but at taxpayers' expense, like, that's the thing, I don't know how many million we put into the budget extra to try to improve our service level, which the development doesn't even have to look at for 10 years. Am I correct in that?
We generally do our DCs on a 4 to 5 year basis, so that's when we're looking at it.
Okay, so we're just 4 to 5 years out of date.
But your historical period that you must
Yes.
look at is 10 years back.
Okay,
And it's
appreciate
an
that.
average.
What is our modal split with regard to transit right now?
Modal split for, well, there's, modal split is generally measured by all transit out of Oakville, and so the modal split number is severely skewed by GO Train. So I think the modal split right now is probably about 17 or 18%, but that includes the GO Train.
Okay, but includes.
Significantly lower in Oakville.
Do we
You're
have?
talking modal split between automobile and car and
Right,
transit, yeah.
It is it's significantly lower.
Significantly less than that, yeah.
So with our road structure, I know it's a little bit more than I know just your transit, but with our road structure, are we building our road structure to meet what percentage modal split?
I don't have that information.
No, I realize, I'm sorry, but when I see Mr. Green here, I think he probably knows.
If you, and we examine this during both at the region and the area municipalities, I think it was the 2004 transportation master plans. If you look at the road network that we're planning on the go forward, both locally and regionally, and I think in the regional plan, the goal for modal split was 20%. And that was for not all trips, but local transit trips. The road network that required was not really impacted in a negative way if you didn't achieve that. So the base amount of roads you need, whether you had a 20% modal split or you only had 10, you still had a road network that can deal with the traffic. So we were not undersizing the road network with what some people at the time considered to be an overinflated goal.
Our modal split at the region, and that's, you know,
And that is a very aggressive goal at 20%.
well, how has it been over the last 40 years? I don't think it's moved 2 percentage points in 40 years from less than 10%.
Now, if you look at on a regional-wide basis, there's not been that growth. I mean, if you look at, and I'll pass this to Mr. Cole, I mean, if you look at, as you say, there's the transit trips that involve GO Transit and ourselves, that is at about 17%. If you look at our direct impact on automobile trips, I believe we're in about the 6% modal split. If you
5-6%.
look at, though, for example, going to the GO Train, I believe our modal split, if you look at GO Train users, which is a very large percentage of users, we operate at about, is it 38 or 40%?
Well, of our total service.
Yeah.
Right.
So it depends what you have as a denominator as to what that modal split is.
No, I
If you didn't have transit going into the GO Train, we'd never have enough lanes of road to get people there. So transit is an important part. We've been trying to grow transit in addition to not being just the radio, which we had in the past. We're now trying to grow on a grid system transit throughout the community so that we have that interconnectivity and you're able to give people a choice.
No, I appreciate where we're going, but it's sometimes a hard pill to swallow when you look at the cost.
It is, and when you look at the costs, yes.
Yeah. Now, west of Bronte Road and south of Dundas, that area now is basically built out, which was the old, the Richview area. Is there a full-time transit daily service into that area?
We have Route 32 and Route 14 that both go out west of Bronte Road to Burl Oak.
Yeah, because I think
They're every
they're
day.
fully operational,
That's
and
correct.
they meet in with all the other loops.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's correct.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mayor Burton.
I'd like to take us back to where Councillor Elger started, which was the $17 million. And you asked, I thought, a good question about where did that come from? And I just want, and then you mentioned later that you were on the council when council made a decision to expand transit. I just want to, for the people who don't know all that you know, I just want to share with the rest of them, staff, just ask you, the question is, I'll ask you to correct me where I'm wrong. But it was approximately 2007 when council decided, if I recall correctly, that we were going to shift from a radial system where all the bus routes went in and out of the GO station to a grid concept of expanded service. So you could go up and down town and back and forth across town more conveniently. And we predicted, staff predicted to us that this would be they gave us 4 models to choose from. And as I recall, they might have recommended the gold-plated version, and council chose the diamond-encrusted version. Anyway, there was A, B, C, D. Council chose D, which was the big one, if I recall correctly. You're being corrected already. Good.
It's really easy.
He didn't like the gold-plated part.
We didn't go for the gold as staff. There were 3 levels. A was actually a reduction. B was around the status quo, but with some improvements. C was a very aggressive. D was in your dreams. The selection at the time, staff recommendation was at B. But the council, and this was, I believe, the 2004 master plan, which involved transit, the selection at that time was C, which was a very aggressive over time.
So, I have a strong memory that in 2007, one of the first things we did was revisit this decision.
Yeah.
And thank you for naming 2004. It's bedeviled me like crazy to find the first vote, and I wasn't looking far enough back.
I was still there.
And in 2007, my memory is that council affirmed its commitment to the big picture, the big service. And that increased spending on operations by 50%. So what is 17 now used to be sub 12. And that was, and we did get increased ridership, but we were at 40% recovery, if I remember correctly, when we were radial.
I think when I go back into the days I was acting transit manager and amongst a number of other things. I think in those days with our radial system, we were at the 38, 39, 40% mark.
Yeah. We were given a chart. I'll find it for you if you're interested, but it shows dancing around the 40% level of recovery. And I think we knew when we went with the bigger, more expensive one that our rate of recovery, even though ridership would go up and has gone up, I think we knew the recovery rate was going to come down.
Mayor Burton, you might like to know that the Oakville Transit budget in 2001 was $5.3 million.
Yeah.
Gone up a bit.
It's gone up a little bit.
So there's been a aggressive investment in transit, pro-transit choices by council, running as a strong thread through the last 15 years. I'm not arguing against it. I'm just saying we chose it. I think when you get the impact of growth on the capital side of transit, because what do we do, 3 buses a year maybe?
We haven't purchased an expansion bus in 5 years.
Yeah, so, until you spend some capital, you're not even going to get nicked by the growth rules on that. So transit's a homegrown story, part of a vision of multiple councils and more than one mayor. And I've often thought that the real problem with transit is half the town refuses to like it under any circumstances, and half the town likes it. And so when you get to 52%, because we've had surveys done that show that, right? So when you get a survey that says 52% approval, that actually reflects that split. I know people who, I mean, I get regular complaints from certain individuals who don't want us to have buses because, you know, people should buy a car. I mean, it just happens. People divide on this.
Okay, I think the floor is going to go to Councillor O'Meara and then Demoff and then back to Elgar. This is a hot topic.
Okay, actually, if somebody else wants to speak on this topic, they can. I was going to switch off this topic, but I'll cede the floor
Okay.
if there's still conversations on this.
Is there conversation on transit that wants to continue on? Councillor Elgar, I think you wanted to respond. Councillor Demoff, are you talking about transit? Okay, then why don't you go ahead then?
Thank you very much, and actually, thank you to the mayor for bringing that up, because I do commend council for what you did. This was before I was on council, changing over to the grid system, and it has made a huge improvement. And you know, the number of people that I hear from who wish we had more service. And my question is, it's obviously not being dealt with in here, but one of the things that would improve our ridership, I'm sure, was faster service times. I mean, when it's this cold winter, I can't imagine waiting for a bus for 40 minutes in the minus 20-degree weather. So will those things be coming back to us through the transit service review that we're going to be getting? Because I really think that's the next huge step that we can take. The grid was sort of the first phase, and then increasing service times would just take us to another level.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Short answer is yes. It'll be addressed through the transit service review. When we increased service levels in 2009, when council approved the new service design, we experienced, subsequent to that, about 32 straight months of ridership increase. And it capped out to about a 25% increase over the ridership level that we experienced before we had that. And it generally takes 2 to 3 years to realize the full potential of service improvements. So at about 2.5 million rides, and we're now at 3 million rides, so you know, 500,000 rides at an average fare of $2.40. We've recovered now in our operating almost equivalent to what that incremental increase cost was to the service at that time. What the service review now is looking at is what's the next step. So how do we revitalize ridership growth? And the avenue that we believe is the best one pursued is to increase frequency on those routes where we're having success. On generally speaking, on many of the grid routes and some of the long-standing routes like 24 and 14, et cetera. And then to find alternative means of delivering service in the areas where we just haven't been able to generate ridership. We don't want to abandon those areas, but there has to be a lower cost alternative to providing transportation to those areas of the town. And what we're proposing in actually the caravan report on service area through the commingling and the home to hub strategies, those are brand new strategies in the transit industry, and we believe those have the potential to provide the solution in the low ridership areas and allow us to reallocate resources to the primary corridors.
Now, I have two other general transit questions. They aren't directly related to these reports. Do you want me to ask them now or wait till?
If you wouldn't mind, let's go back to Councillor Elgar, because I think he had something directly on this, and then let's continue talking about the transit topic since we've got Mr. Cole on the stage here.
Thank you. No, my only comment is I think the people of Oakville are not aware of what we are forced as a town to administer, which is the Development Charges Act, which does not allow us to cover the costs of growth related to transit. And I think that, and it's big, the dollars are big, and I just think we have to start educating people that want a much higher level of service, that in fact, we're not, just the straight growth, we can't even deal with that, never mind increasing level of service, because it's on the existing taxpayers. And like, that's what's got to be changed provincially. I know we can't do anything about it, but the numbers are huge, and I don't think people are aware of it. So I look forward to a bit more changes in the Development Charges Act, and hopefully we'll catch up someday, but it's a big number. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor DeMoff, you want to continue on the transit question?
Well, I do, because when Councillor Elgar brought up something, it reminded me. One question I get asked all the time, and I just wonder if you could answer this publicly for us so we've got it, is about why don't we use little buses? So I'll often get emails from people who will say, I see the big buses, why don't you put the small buses out there? So do you mind answering that so we've got that available for people?
Through you, Mr. Chair. The answer to that question was actually the subject of a fairly lengthy report and presentation to Council some time ago. It's not a simple question, a simple answer, but I'll try. Essentially, the cost of the life cycle cost of smaller buses is greater than that of the big buses. So if you were to purchase a 40-foot diesel bus with a 12-year life expectancy, the overall cost of operating that bus is less than if you were to buy the smaller capacity buses, which at the time were close in capital cost and exceeded the 40-foot diesel bus in terms of maintenance costs, and the driver costs are consistent no matter which vehicle you use. So it just made sense to continue to purchase, the solid performer and the lowest cost option over the period of the life of the vehicle. You also have to purchase a vehicle that considers ridership not just now, but ridership through the life of the bus. So if the bus is going to last you 12 years, what's your ridership going to be in 10 years, and what are your capacity needs going to be? So there's a number of things that come into play, but we do not have a fleet that allows us to be as flexible and as responsive as we need to be when we consider the growth that's taking place and the need to, establish early penetration into new developments, et cetera. And in that presentation I made to Council, I noted that there were no large bus manufacturers that were producing a reliable, low-cost 30-foot smaller capacity bus. There is now. And we, Oakville Transit, through the National Association, was one of the leaders in advocating for this. And so there are now two very good products that have just come onto the market, and we have converted our the next, I believe, 4 to 5 years of our capital forecast to include the purchase of 30-foot smaller capacity vehicles. That gives us the ability to essentially right-size our fleet in terms of the areas where we're providing service. So in lower ridership areas, we can put a smaller capacity bus. It's less intrusive and will be less cost to purchase, and we believe, similar costs in terms of maintenance and ongoing operation. So we have that now. We have that option available to us, and we're pursuing it. As well, the recommendation that is in the Caravan Service Area report to pursue commingling and home to hub allows us to use our existing smallest capacity bus, which is the specialized transit bus, and a seating capacity of about, I believe, about 15, it's 10 ambulatory and 5 wheelchair locations. So we can use those vehicles now through this strategy to have, to allow us to reach far into new developments where a standard 40-foot bus could not get to, and provide essentially at-your-door service that would transport people to the nearest transit hub. So once we have the 30-foot bus, that combined with the small capacity specialized bus and the 40-foot diesel bus, we'll get to the right mix, and then we're responsive, we're flexible, and we have the right size of fleet.
It's really good news.
Yes.
And then my last question, when we were talking about rates and fees, we talked about the UPass. And it's been on my mind a lot since then. Councillor Elgar and I had discussed it a bit. And I'm wondering, I know the mayor has a really good relationship with the mayor of Brampton and Mississauga, as well as the president of Sheridan College. And I'm just wondering if through the budget committee, do you think it would be helpful if we provided direction to the mayor to work with those mayors and the president of Sheridan to try and move this along? Because it seems to have been stalled for quite some time. Maybe you can't answer that. Okay.
Mayor Britton, it's all yours.
Well, the short answer is I don't need direction. I've already been working on it for 8 years. The obstacle is the student association has to agree to it. The student association has refused to bring it to a vote. The college is what in my day, we used to call a car college. And the student government tends to reflect its student members. And the car driving members pretty much run the student government, and they're again it. And they've been consistent all the way through. I get asked by the journalism program there to be their practice dummy, a job I'm uniquely.
How's that working for you?
I'm uniquely qualified for that. And they need to do practice stories with me, their practice dummy. And so I always turn their interviews into a challenge to them as a crusading student newspaper to get this changed. Because curiously, the journalism program seems to be populated by a majority of bus riding students. And they've been unable to whip the student body into a prairie fire of grassroots enthusiasm for a Unipass. We've gone farther. Director Cole and the directors of the two other municipalities have created an offer no one ought to be able to refuse in terms of an all-you-can-use Unipass through 3 cities, and they still managed to turn it down. The college itself, unhelpfully, was it 2 years ago now, or a year? It's more than a year, though, created their own bus system because the bus riding students were upset with how hard it was to get among the campuses. And I don't know if you've seen the Sheridan bus fleet, but they're pretty fancy. They've got Wi-Fi. They don't have bars and hostesses, but you know they're a level of service above what we provide the public. And I warned them when they went down that road that they were going to find the cost to be excitingly prohibitive and unsustainable, and I now hear that they have. But President Zabudsky was already shoulder to shoulder with us, engaged in trying to move the students to support of this. I've fallen back to telling him he's got to admit more bus riders and fewer car drivers. And of course, he can't do that. So it's, from a distance, I think it looks like a simple problem to solve, but I can tell you that up close, when you start dealing with the preferences of students, it gets a little trickier.
I guess
Okay.
it was,
Sounds like we need to continue on that crusade, and we'll continue on it.
yeah, I mean, I think, I was thinking more along the lines, there's a new mayor in Brampton, new mayor in Mississauga, and if, as you say, the transit that Sheridan is running is becoming prohibitive.
We're still pushing.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
The new bit that I shared with you is the college has just discovered that they can't afford it. So we have a new opportunity.
Mike, please.
The college appears to be discovering right now that it's a little more expensive than they can bear. It's a new opportunity to go back to the students and say, we still have this wonderful deal, come on over. As I say, it's a tricky one.
Thank you. I think we may have exhausted this question, no? Yeah. No. Okay. Okay, so Councilor O'Meara, I think you had some other matters that you wanted to talk about unrelated to transit.
I did. It's almost like,
It's shocking, I know.
isn't
There's
it? I
other
know. I
things
thought,
other
I
than
thought we were
transit.
at Toronto Council for a minute with the amount of transit conversation going on here. But nevertheless, some of these questions are just for my own edification, so they'll go through them pretty quickly. But Commissioner Bell, the EAB, our Emerald Ash Borer program, I know we're spending a lot of money on it. Are we tracking the results of how if it's successful or not? Are we following up with the trees, and is it a viable program that we're running right now?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I'm assuming you're referring to the tree injection
Yes.
program? So we have an extensive quality assurance program, and it's divided into 2 parts. The first part is that we have a company out of Burlington called ISI Labs that once we have injected trees, they come and do leaf samples 24 hours to 48 hours after the injection has taken place to ensure that the injection is actually taking hold in the tree. And then the second part of it is that we have a separate company who actually tests and looks at the
tree canopy over a longer period of time to ensure that, yes, in fact, it's viable. So our target is 75% that trees will continue to live, and at this point, we're at 77.
Perfect, thank you. The boundary road agreement with Burlington, what is that?
I'm going to ask Enrico to speak to that one.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we have, ourselves and other municipalities usually share a common road, which is, we call a boundary road. And the agreement basically describes responsibilities and shared responsibilities on, with respect to road maintenance. And then the cost recovery associated with that.
So up until this point, we didn't have an agreement, or we were?
Sorry, the agreement is a renewal agreement,
Okay.
and it normally gets renewed on a 5-year cycle or earlier if there has been changes in the limits of the boundary roads.
Perfect, thank you. The other thing, Commissioner Bell, I saw was the Shell Park tennis courts, but I didn't see the basketball court and nautical park in there. Is that?
The basketball court in Nautical was approved last year
Okay.
and will be constructed this year.
Will be constructed this year, sorry, thank you. Just to jump to the RBC Canadian Open, I'm not sure who's going to field this question, but it mentioned that we're coordinating with the Pan Ams, and I'm not sure how or what that means. I was hoping to get some clarification on that.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we have a planning committee for the Canadian Open. On that committee, we have representatives from Golf Canada and also from the region. The region are they're in direct coordination with Pan Am with respect to the games route, and also Golf Canada is, I believe, coordinating one of the Pan Am golf event. So through those representatives, we are coordinating games route and various, I guess, activities that would or would not impact the organization of the Canadian Open.
Okay, so more logistical coordination, that's the sort of thing that we're doing?
Correct.
Okay, perfect, thanks. I'm going to jump to the fourth report on the cultural landscape heritage item. In the report, it states that it's our obligation to notify the private landowners, and then they can deny and access to the land. So I'm just wondering what we do at that point.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Is this on? You can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We'd rely on aerial photos and around the boundaries of the property in order to gather the information that we would need. So we'd look at other ways of collecting the data. It's much more effective if we can be on the property, but we'd find alternative means.
Okay, so that's not a game ending, we just go around it then?
It's not a game ending situation.
Perfect, thanks. And then I'm sorry, I'm trying to be hasty, but my last request is going to, I think, Ms. Gaucher-Manche, it's to you. We've talked quite frequently about Let's Talk Oakville, and there's been a long conversation about the viability, the costs associated, these sorts of things. I'm wondering, in the budget we've got for council and ward newsletters, close to $80,000 budgeted. Does that include the human resources to produce that, or is that just materials?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that budget is actually in the office of the mayor and council.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. Yeah, the cost, there is a staff person dedicated to communications in the office of mayor and council. Mm-hmm. So that would be the individual that is working on it. And in terms of the external writers, that's within the budget for the newsletters.
So that would all be encompassed in the
Yes.
the number there?
Yeah.
Okay, and the mailing and everything is in there?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm getting eyes, so I'm not sure who I should be addressing here, but.
I mean, that, I'll use it, traditionally, that is how it's been done. It's all been funded through that. So no money comes out of our communications budget. It's
Okay.
all funded through the money that's allocated in the mayor's budget.
Okay, so
Council
I'm
budget.
wondering.
Mayor and council budget, sorry.
I think your question is, if we didn't have Let's Talk Oakville, would we save 80 or would we save 80 plus some staffing costs that would be soft costs?
Yeah,
Is that
I'm
what your
just trying to
question
get
is?
the whole picture of what the costs associated with that, with publishing and distributing and writing for that, and I'm hearing it's 80. So, one thing I'm wondering if town staff might be able to come back to us and identify what it would look like for individual councillors' communications budget if we were to keep an 80,000 cap, what that would look like, and for Councillor Elger's a constant reminder, proportionally in terms of residents. I'm just wondering what that would look like, or if we might be able to get a report back, in terms of budget implications. So if we were to take that 80, divide it up between the councillors and the mayor based on proportion, what we would be looking at if we were to decide to not go down that path of Let's Talk Oakville, but perhaps do something. I know in the past that individual councillors had done something like that, and I believe we went to a Let's Talk Oakville frame, but I just wondering what that might look like.
Certainly through you, Mr. Chairman, if there's a request for the report, staff would be pleased. And I think what we'd have to look at is the efficiency. Like right now, you have one document which is covering, I believe you each have articles in it. It is 2 mailings that go out, fairly efficient. We could look at how that efficiency would be affected. If you did it individual, we'd certainly be pleased to look at that. But you may find what you actually have now is quite efficient
Councillor
in that
O'Meara,
single mailing. But
we did used to have a word-by-word based newsletter long ago, and so yes, it's been done that way in the past. It wasn't as good a quality set of materials that could get out because of the relative funding, but we could certainly ask for a report on options regarding redeploying the funding currently dedicated to Let's Talk Oakville, and that would be a starting point for discussion around what do you do with those funds, because you could deploy them in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, Councillor Demoff on other matters?
Yes, I have questions for Commissioner Bell. First one, I just want to comment on something is I want to commend staff on what you've done with Oakville Arena. We've also heard from a lot of residents, Oakville Arena and the consultation process on that, because it was really well done. West Harbour improvements that you've done, we've had a number of emails from residents who are so impressed with the work that's already been done, and I know it's ongoing. The Watch for Bikes you had brought up, but it was the first in South Central Ontario that did that, and the leadership on that I want to commend you on. And also the library moving to more digital resources. You can now get your music, magazines, and movies on your iPad, which I'm sure a lot of people don't even know. So it's pretty incredible, some of the things that are being done within your commission. I had a question about the innovation space that you mentioned. You said it's at QEP. Mm-hmm. Is that different than the innovation space that was brought up during the Cultural Hub discussions?
Through you, Mr. Chair, excuse me. The space at QEP is intended to be a partnership between Sheridan and the town, and it's to focus on very specific digital media to improve digital media literacy. The space for the Downtown Cultural Hub, which has been identified as innovation space, is intended for more cultural purposes. At this point in time, we're still in the process of defining what that would look like, but the intent is that perhaps arts groups, cultural groups would actually be part of that particular space.
So there wouldn't be an opportunity to have them combined in one place? Like QEP seems so isolated from Sheridan College. It just seems like a strange location to be doing that as opposed to right downtown.
So the partnership with Sheridan College is intended to develop digital literacy within
the QEP community.
Okay.
So it's not intended to be that Sheridan is holding classes there or anything like that. It's really more of a programming partnership.
Okay. The ash trees, are we caught up in terms of, because we had, last year, we sort of got set back a little bit on our ash tree program just because of the ice storm. Or I think we did. Are we caught up now on the damage that was done from the ice storm, that we can go back to concentrating on the ash trees, or is there still a bit of an overlap there?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the ice storm damage, we have about 1,500 trees that we still need to work on, but we are incorporating that into our regular program. So in terms of the EAB program, we did suspend it for a period of time last year because we had workload issues with respect to the ice storm. So there was no tree planting done in the fall, as an example. So what we are doing right now is we have recalibrated the budget to try and address those most pressing issues with respect to ash trees, with the idea that we will try and do as much stumping and removal as possible this year so that we can do very intensive tree planting and replacement in 2016.
Okay. You mentioned the foot traffic at the centers, which is great, but there's no comparison. So how does that compare to last year? Obviously, we're up, but I'd be curious to know what the trend is on the foot traffic at the various centers.
Well, what we're finding in terms of, and the way to calibrate is by programming. So we're finding that our camps, our youth programming, and our children's programming is all trending upward at a fairly dramatic rate. And we anticipate that year over year, because of those particular programs, that we will continue to trend upward with respect to foot traffic. The one area where we do have challenges is adult memberships. This is not uncommon. Most municipalities, if you talk to their recreation departments, are also struggling with respect to adult programming, and it's because there's such competition in the community. And the other issue is that for a lot of adults, they tend to work out where they work because it fits in better with their schedule, and then they come home and they take the kids out for programming. So it's a whole sort of pattern there.
Because I did note, that was another question I actually had. I noticed the adult programming was down. So does that include the fitness memberships as well? Or is that just that's just the adult programming, the classes that you can sign up for?
I'll let Nina.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, it's the programming. It doesn't apply to our fitness. And to answer your previous question, the foot traffic in the previous year was 3.86 million, and now it's 3.93. So it is trending upward.
That's great. My last question has to do with the emergency services budget, and in there it says that the overtime is lumped in with the salaries. And I know last year there was a concern expressed to me and some of the other councillors about the new fire hall and the number of firefighters that were being hired for that hall. I'd be interested in getting a breakdown in the overtime in that budget from June of 14 to December of 15, and then compare it to the previous year for the same time period.
We can certainly do that for you.
Okay, thank you. And that's it.
Councillor Elgar, you had a question, I think, about the parks side.
Yes, thank you. It's just it's a question to staff regarding our park maintenance, boulevard grass cutting program, and just in general, it's about the different the grasses which we seed. And I'm wondering if there's some other type of coverage we should be using instead of the grass what we use now, because we all know it gets worn down very badly. And is there something better we can do? Like I'm thinking even a clover is pretty hardy once it gets going, rather than our grass that everybody uses, and it isn't working long term, and it's a heck of a lot of maintenance. I wonder if staff can come back and give us some alternatives that they think would be better going forward.
Absolutely, we could.
I appreciate that. I think that we're all used to the Kentucky bluegrass and all the other mixes out there, but you know they're truly not sustainable, based on the fact that we're not spraying for a good reason, and I think maybe there's probably a better seed out there that would take over where the dandelions are today. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Elgar, can you just repeat that request for a report?
Yeah,
You want staff to report on the type of
A
grass
type
seed?
of seeding that we could be using in our parks, our boulevards, so that we can reduce the number of mowings per year also, because it's a big problem at the beginning of the year because the grass grows so fast, and then by August it's brown anyway. Whereas if we had maybe a clover, you wouldn't have this issue going forward. It would cut down an awful lot of maintenance costs, I would hope, in the grass cutting side.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I appreciate you repeating that for me. I'm compiling a list of things. Any other questions? Okay, I have, thank you, Councillor DeMott, for asking that question about the overtime. That was one of the questions I wanted to prompt our staff on. The other is, we have a report on the LED conversion implementation, and based on that report, there's no firm comment with respect to where to go with it, and I wondered if staff could provide us with some guidance.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can provide a presentation or just summarize with the options at the one slide where I show all the costs associated with each option.
In this particular instance, it might be useful for you to pull up your slides because you've got some summary charts, I think, that might be helpful for you to speak off of.
Okay, so I'll go through the full presentation, and which won't take long. Uh-oh. Which one do I click? 50-50 it. You broke it. You own it.
I think it should be okay.
So, bit of background, I'll just go through this very, very quickly. Traffic operations are responsible for the maintenance of our streetlight infrastructure, and through that, primarily, that's done through the capital budget. In 2014, that budget was expanded to include conversion of high-pressure sodium lights to LED. And so we have approximately 15,300 townwide streetlights to be converted. And depending on the option that we go with, it's plus or minus $10 million. So upon full conversion of all our streetlights, the energy savings is approximately $900,000. And then when you add in the maintenance savings associated with that, because LED fixtures have a longer lifespan, anywhere from 2 to 3 times longer, we're looking at $1.2 million savings annually. So that's a huge number. And then in 2014, we provided a 10-year expedited program option, and at that time, council asked us to refer that to the budget committee. In addition to that, to provide some other expedited options and report back on alternative project delivery methods. So in the energy conservation sector, some alternative methods are through design build entities known as, or call it joint venture entities known as energy service companies or ESCOs. And so they provide a variety of services from design to implementation. So these agreements that we would have with an ESCO, they're structured as performance contracts, and the actuals for those contracts they're verified through monitoring field measurements and actual hydro billings. And so the advantages, obviously bundled services, we can establish through negotiation, established guaranteed savings and performance thresholds for the fixtures. And obviously the big benefit is the reduced timelines. And then with the disadvantages, cost of service is a little bit more expensive because you get that bundled into turnkey service. And The agreement itself is a little bit more complicated. It's almost like a two-stage RFP process. We surveyed municipalities that were undertaking streetlight conversion. And of those that are doing it, most of them are using traditional methods, but there are a few that are utilizing ESCOs, and we did get feedback from them, and the feedback was very, very positive. Obviously, the bundled services and the ability to quickly convert their streetlights were big factors in utilizing an ESCO. Just want to highlight the project lengths. A lot of the municipalities they've targeted their conversion on higher wattage fixtures, and so if you notice some of the fixtures amounts, they've strictly I guess restricted that scope to the major road corridors, which obviously, if they have the higher wattage fixtures, they have the biggest opportunity for energy conservation and cost benefits. We, the town, our intent is to convert all the fixtures, and that would include fixtures on our major arterials and our local roads, and the 15,000 street light amount that does include everything. And when you start to include everything, we are talking about fixtures that on our local roads primarily we have a lot of decorative fixtures, and there is a little bit of time associated with picking the right fixture that sort of matches what's existing. So we don't think that we can do it anywhere less than 3 years. So as requested, we've provided options, and just quickly go through the options. First, I'll start by I'll just say what's common. So again, what's common with these options, I should have mentioned previously, but the financing is common. We are going to finance through debentures. The other area municipalities, under the Municipal Act, we are restricted. Usually, some other provincial and federal agencies are utilizing ESCOs for financing their projects. We're more restrictive, being a municipality, so every municipality that is undertaking streetlight conversion are doing that through debentures or reserves. So each option is common with utilizing debentures and reserves, and the term of that debt for each option is 10 years. Again, what's common with each option is upon full conversion, we're going to realize $1.2 million in annual operating savings. And also, too, what's common with each option is the debt charges, including principal and interest, are all offset by savings in operating. So again, that's common with each option. So if we go the first option, the ESCO model, obviously it is shortest implementation period, 3 years. We are able to maximize the OPA grants. The grants right now are only in place for 2015. We're hopeful that's going to continue, but in each of the 3 options, we've only identified we believe fixtures that can be converted within 2015, and then that's how we could carry the associated OPA grant. ESCO option has the highest initial capital cost of $10.7 million, and then obviously with the higher cost, it has the highest annual debt charges of $1.2 million. However, it is the earliest to realize those budget savings in 2028, and its estimated payback period is 3 years. The second option is a 5-year conversion program, which would be delivered through conventional project delivery methods. Obviously, a couple years longer. OPA grants a little bit less again because it's solely associated with what we would convert in 2015. Total cost is a little less, and again associated with the annual debt charges. And obviously, because it would take longer, we're going to realize those savings a little bit later. And the payback period isn't too much different than the first option, but it is slightly longer. The third option is a 10-year conversion program, this is what we proposed to council earlier on. Longest implementation period, lowest grant available. However, it does have the lowest total cost, primarily because we're going to leverage the experience that we have in-house to do the engineering and the project management. Again, and then associated with the lowest cost, it has the lowest debt charges. But all debt charges for all three options are very, very similar. And of course, associated with the length of the conversion program, we'll going to be experiencing those savings 7 years after option one, and it has the longest payback period. So here's here's a summary of all the options. What I want to highlight is the fact that on the very right-hand column, the year the debt's paid off, so that's the year that we're going to realize the full savings in our operating budget of $1.2 million. And maybe I'll just stop it at that, and I'll open it to questions.
Okay, so thanks for walking us through that. There's two questions. One, the first question is, how much debt has to be issued to make each of these happen in which years? And based on that, what would we be comfortable with?
So the debt gets issued as soon as we start incurring cost in the project. So the debt would be issued right away in 2015, depending on what we would plan to convert.
For the total project cost, or for some component of it?
For a component that we would convert annually.
Right. So are you able to provide us with a chart showing for these three options the debt issuance model that would be required? I mean, those details, so that we can properly manage our debt loads?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, we can.
Okay. So I think that's a further report that's required for proper consideration of the matter. Right? Okay. And from that, do staff have a recommendation on this? Because really the recommendation is just to receive this report. And I think there's a question here about what do we do with it? Or do we just continue on the road that we're on?
Well, so in review of the options, certainly with respect to the budget and with respect to our operating budget, the cost of hydro and the cost of operating our street lights is going to continue to increase. The sooner we convert, the sooner we realize those operating savings. So the earlier options are definitely, in my mind, are better for the town. The thing to consider is 3-year versus 5-year, which I believe we have a graph in the staff report that shows that those options are fairly similar. The ESCO is more of a little bit of a complicated agreement, but you know, from what we've been hearing, other municipalities that are using it are pretty happy with the process. So it would be new territory for the town, so there is a little bit of risk there. So if we're comfortable with that risk, the 3-year option. If we want to do things more in a more traditional manner, the 5-year option.
Okay, thank you. I'm satisfied with our discussion right now, and we'll work with our staff to get further information for the committee to try to put forward a recommendation on the matter. Okay? Any other questions for our staff at this point, or are we ready to go on to the last component of our staff reports? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I believe we are done with that, Commission. And Gord, I think you're up.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure today to introduce you. No, not until I get the slides up. There we are, this one. This slideshow over here somewhere. Thanks. Okay, yeah. Okay, now it's my pleasure to introduce you to corporate services. As you can see, the programs of corporate services are at the tabs that are listed on this page. I think before I go any further, just as way of opening remarks, I'd like to mention that while some of our services are public-facing, such as tax and regulatory services, we generally provide a corporate context for work to go on in. So many of the projects and work that you've seen presented to you this morning, we play a small hand in, or sometimes quite a large hand in making those come to pass. Corporate services puts quite a strong emphasis on KPIs, and the next 3 slides are going to be dealing with KPIs. In your spare time or at your leisure, I'd invite you to take a look at tab 30, where our KPIs are listed. They fall under 4 categories: economy and efficiency, and I'll call your attention to some of those in a minute. Impact on organizational performance, and in that area we're thinking about, how do we automate systems to make them more efficient and more effective, and I'll call your attention to some of those. Modernization, it's come up a few times that some of our systems are coming to end of life, and one of our jobs is to try and get those things modernized and moving along. And then every 2 years we do a survey on commissioner and user satisfaction. We did our survey in 2013. We did not do one for this budget, so you'll see not applicables, but when we come around to the 2016 budget, you'll have those survey results that are to our community. This slide shows that there have been fairly small changes in the corporate service tax levy. You can see most of the increases are due to increases in personnel benefits and those inflationary pressures. I would call your attention, though, to two items. First of all, information systems and solutions has increased, and the reason that it has increased is because there's transfer of 3 staff from the library to information systems and services when they assumed full responsibility for delivering information systems and services to the library. So those staffs moved from one area of the town to the other, and it's making this look noticeable. And in FCM, where the amount that is committed to FCM has actually gone down, there have been a number of HR changes that I'll call your attention to in a few minutes that we deployed in order to reduce our purchase services. So those are the 2 noteworthy pieces on this slide. Otherwise, it's pretty much business as usual. This is one of the KPIs that I was talking about that we use. So this is really a relative operating cost KPI. Since we provide most of our service to the town, we measure what our costs for each of our departments are against the overall budget of the town. So you can see that we really are quite stable. There is an error in your package in the KPI pages, and we have replacements for you that we'll pass out later on. The political governance, there's a typo error in it, but as you can see, in 2013, political governance was 0.7% of the total budget, projected to be 0.7. Human resources, they're all quite stable and marching along a very stable organization. And you see those increases in IS&S. I've already called your attention to those. It's because of these transfers that we were talking about, and support for some of the new applications that you've heard about already. The AVL for fire and the infrastructure maintenance is part of that cost. We also do a count on our full-time equivalent staff. So this number is arrived at by dividing the total number of FTEs in a department by the total number of FTEs in the town. And you can see once again that there's a great deal of stability in the 11% or so of corporate resources that we use for all of our different programs. Under accomplishments, this is kind of a funny one. As I've mentioned earlier, we play a large part in supporting other departments to achieve their goals. And so, all of these things that I'm putting up here are really an achievement of teams. They're very rarely an achievement of corporate services by itself. So we play a hand in, sometimes a slightly different hand in things, but always it's a hand in what other departments are doing. So the first one, the ice storm funding, the application to the provincial government was about a 5,000-page document that went in. It was highly scrutinized. We were questioned very, very thoroughly on that application, and as you know, in the end, we've received about 35% of our application, and so that was a successful effort. But it's one of those things that takes place behind the scenes. On an interim basis, yes, but that is quite right, and our hopes are high that we will see more of that. The hospital transfer agreement, this is the old hospital property. I've mentioned that. That involved 5 different legal agreements, and at the end of the day, I think there was probably hundreds and hundreds of hours of collective negotiation in getting to those five agreements. In keeping with in keeping with council's interest in online activities, I've listed several for your attention. The electronic funds transfer is reducing the number of checks that we write. Writing checks is an expensive process, and if you can get out from under that, it's a good thing, and our EFT initiatives are doing that. We have an online purchase order matching system that now allows us to match the purchase orders to ensure that the work is done. It's improving the accuracy of our purchase order payment. I'm particularly proud every year. If you look at the staff count for the town, we do a major hiring of seasonal staff of about 600 in the spring and about another 600 in the fall. Hiring 600 people is very, very intensive process. And over the course of the last couple of years, we've automated those hirings. So it's all done electronically. It's reduced interview time, scheduling time, paperwork time. It's made payroll more accurate. It has been quite an exceptional achievement. And we are viewed by municipalities around the province. They come and talk to us about how we're doing it and are sort of setting, I think, a bar for best practices. Workspaces is an internal web service that is eliminating paper pay notices and paper reports for sick time and vacation tracking by providing online staff tracking so people can log in and check their sick time and their vacation time from work or from home. And we're also providing enhanced management reports through that facility. I didn't list it in my slide. I just thought of it last night, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the online rec and culture registrations of this year were up by 20%. This is due to huge efforts on the part of rec and culture staff, but it was up by 20%. So in 2 days, we registered 10,500 applicants for a total aggregate amount of about $1.5 million in 2 days. And I mean, that goes to the major efforts of the rec and culture staff, but they needed technology to run that on, and it had to be there to provide it. And finally, there's kind of an interesting process that I hope will come to your attention this year. We've been doing field automation projects that have put tablets in the hands of people in the parks and open space so that the process of analyzing where work has to be done and of actually doing work orders is automated. And that's received very good reviews. I'll call your attention to it as it's something we're going to finish up in 2015. But we've just recently issued our parking enforcement people with pets. and I know that you'll like the name of that. It stands for Parking Enforcement Ticketer. So these are an automated device that they can use to issue tickets much more efficiently than in the past. Well, we won't see the intelligent transportation system for some time. Staff have been working on that for over a year to do the analysis of the software. It's a major purchase. So all of that work has been going on for a year and will continue until you see the rollout of that system. InZone is a planning project, but it required the significant contribution of the legal department. And recently our annotated bylaws were commended by the chair of the vice chair of the OMB for the clarity of work that was done on those. The Universal Design Standard, which I'd mentioned here, we used to call that accessibility guidelines, but it's been renamed our Universal Design Standard, so it applies to all of our buildings, and it's being hailed across the province as a best practice, so people are really quite interested in what we're doing on that. And I know it happens every year, but I'd be remiss if I didn't call your attention to the fact that we're doing another budget, and our audit process in 2013 was clean. So that's the end of my crowing about our achievements for the next little while. And in 2015, our key initiatives will be to finally bring a full implementation of the roads component to our asset management registry. You've seen various statistics through your presentations today. Many of those are coming out of the asset registry. We took a strategic approach many years ago to the development of our asset registry, and it's become a very, very important part in our planning processes. Our DC processes relied heavily on it, and now it's a requirement from higher levels of government that you have an asset management system in place if you want to get additional funding from higher levels of government. We'll be planning the demolition of OTMH, the high school. That planning in itself is quite a large job. Planning and design of the Oakville Arena project will be participating in that. Clearly, it's a rec and culture initiative, but there is FCM and finance and a number of other participants in it. Support for the Brantwood and Chisholm School initiatives. Work will be ramping up to replace for the future replacement of the recreation and registration system. And I mentioned that in 2 days that sustained, e-commerce of about $1.5 million. This is a very, very important project, and we have been working on it for some time. Work will continue on that so that the end-of-life transition to a new system will be smooth. Work will continue on the intelligent transportation system, as I've already called your attention to, the library information system, and we'll finish up the rollout of parks and open space tablets. And that concludes my brief presentation of what's going on in corporate services, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor DeMoff?
Thanks for your presentation, Gordon. The rec and culture registrations. I commend, we do a fabulous job and we have a lot of registrations, but as Colleen knows, there's also a problem with people not being able to get in. And it came to light to me this year. I've heard it before, where someone posted on Facebook. So you get social media going, and yeah, I don't even bother trying to get into town of Oakville to register my kids anymore. I just go straight to the Y. The woman who initially posted it said she got some programs, went to the Y. So what is the timing on getting the system replaced so that people don't get frozen out of registrations?
Well, I don't think they're completely connected to one another. We have had problems in other years in that the steady state of transactions that are going on in the town are much lower than that on a day-to-day basis. And then we come to a registration day, and all of a sudden you're getting 10,000 people wanting to get in between 9 o'clock and 9:10. And so they have they've experienced disruptions because of that very high, intense work at that time. This year at the spring registration, it was by far the best registration we've done, and the systems were not causing very many people to wait. I'm not aware of any significant disruptions in this registration, so it went quite smoothly. The replacement of the registration system will be a much more wide-ranging piece than that online registration. So all of the information, the programs, the integration of the programs with the marketing and so on will be part of that system. And I think that we will be deploying that probably in 2017 or 2018, depending on how well we do with our selection of various alternatives.
So maybe this question isn't for you, maybe it's for Colleen, but could we not stagger the registrations so that all of the camp people aren't bombarding the system at 9 o'clock on the Saturday morning when it opens? Because it was a problem, and it has been a problem with people trying to get in.
All I can say to you is that we're always looking for ways to try and improve the performance of that, and any suggestions are gratefully received.
It would seem like a simple way of spreading the number of people coming online is if it was more staggered in terms of registrations.
Nina might have something to say.
Through you, Mr. Chair. That is a possibility. It is something that we can look into. There are some cons with that approach as well. The advantage of doing it all at once is that it's everybody has sort of a fair shake at it, and now you're asking parents, and particularly what parents do on registration is they like to coordinate their children's activities. So they want to make sure that this child gets into this swimming lesson while this child gets into a different kind of a program at the same time. So that's what they do. So if you stagger registration, now you're asking parents, you will affect their ability to be able to coordinate their activities for the children. Camps is an easy one because they sort of that's separate from all the others. So I mean, we can certainly look at it, but I don't think it'll create other problems. But we're happy to look at it and report
So are
back.
camps registering at the same time as swimming lessons?
Everything that is open on that day of registration.
So
yes.
so we could separate camps out from-
Potentially. I don't want to say that
So,
would
Councillor,
be a good
I
answer.
think our staff will look at it, but on the issue of camps, from personal experience, most parents don't register for camps on day one, but they do for aquatic programs and some of the other day-to-day programs. The camp programs, most parents aren't ready to register their kids for the summer camps until sometime after February 9th or whatever it was.
That's right.
Well, we can agree to disagree on that one.
But, I've done both, but.
Me
I'm
too,
just-
but
I'm just saying, I think on the February 9th, it's probably a smaller piece of the big puzzle. But anyway, I think our staff are willing to look at it.
Well, certainly will, but I would add that apart from the one comment that you heard, we actually did not hear any negative comments, and we monitor on Facebook and Twitter as well. This was as Commissioner Lalonde mentioned, it was actually a very good registration.
oh, you do great. I'm not faulting what you've been able to do in terms of registrations, because I think we keep seeing it going up, and the programming that's offered is great. It's a shame when people are leaving because they can't get onto the computer system. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question I wanted to raise with you, and it's the issue of funding of our reserves. We had a brief discussion about stabilization reserves, and there's two issues that I wanted to raise with you and have you report back on. One is what's the appropriate reserve level for some of our reserves, and the other is we are over time we're using the reserves sometimes to fund one-time expenses, which is entirely appropriate. And I just want to make sure that we've got the right level to be able to fund those things as we go forward. So could we report back on options to manage reserves?
We'd be happy to do that.
Okay, I think that's great. Anything else? Okay, members of committee, we've gone through the staff presentations. There is at least one member of the public here today who may wish to provide information today. Mr. Vicentin, do you wish to speak with us today, or would you like to provide information at a later date? You are welcome to come provide up to 10 minutes worth of. Yeah.
There's a report in your package which I don't feel you went through. If you actually, did I miss that? Was I asleep? You went through the council heritage landscape?
It was touched upon briefly during the presentations of our staff, but if. Would you mind coming down and just give us your name? We're very happy to speak with you. If you wouldn't mind just giving your name for the clerk, and I understand you're from Club Link Enterprises.
Yes, my name is Robert Byzantine. I'm the Senior VP of Investments for Club Link and formerly the Chief Financial Officer. And that change just happened in the last 2 weeks. And one of the questions that I have is I noticed in the material that Oakville claims that it has transparency in the things that it's doing. And one of the things that I'm a little annoyed at is that our name, our address at Glen Abbey is in the heritage list of private properties. They're going to be reviewed, and there's been no notice to us. I found out through a third party that this was happening in the background. I think it's a responsibility for the town to notify the people that are on the list of being considered for heritage sites. Period. That's my only comment for today. I don't know, Jane was kind enough to agree to have a meeting with me next week to help me get up to date on what's happening with the program. And that's scheduled for Thursday of next week. That's great. But I think it's unfair to the owners that are being considered for them not to be notified that this is on the docket. That's my comment for today.
Okay, any members of committee have any questions? Councillor DeMoff?
I would have a question of staff based on what he was asking. I wonder if you could just go through the process of how properties are listed and then designated, or
Jane, do you want to
just the process that's involved.
Certainly. The purpose of the report that's on the agenda is to really look at the funding to initiate that program. But normally what happens when we list a property, and remember this is a cultural heritage landscape and it's a new area that we're exploring. We had taken a report forward in January on an overall strategy for cultural heritage landscapes. But typically properties that are, or buildings that are listed on our registry, we consider listing them onto the registry, and once the list has gone forward and gone to council and gone to the Heritage Committee, then we send a notification out, because it doesn't actually designate the property until you've gone through a full consultation process. So that's typically the way we undertake it for the listed properties that we've dealt with to date. This is a brand new program that we'd be looking at. And as we go forward, we'd follow a very similar process, but there would be extensive consultation with the landowners because I think, as Councillor Mayor had asked earlier, we would be looking for access to the property just to understand what resources were on there. So there would be a full consultation process as part of the project once it gets underway.
So then, just to be clear, the list that's in here, just so that the gentleman is aware, this isn't designating it. This is just putting it on a list to explore whether or not, and there would be full public consultation going forward based on whether it was listed or designated, right?
Yes, but I would clarify the list that's in the back of the report. It's not a list of listed properties at this point in time. It's looking at a cultural heritage landscape and the types of properties that we may consider as part of that list. So because the cultural landscape is a brand new element that's in the Ontario Heritage Act, it was never there before, when we wrote the strategy, we tried to give some overall direction on how we would approach it. And these are lands that may fit into that, but it's not even to the extent of being listed at this point in time.
Okay. Mr. Vicentin, did that answer your question about the process?
I don't want to belabor this point, but I don't think it did. The report that council approved to go on this exercise was approved in January of 2014, over 14 months ago. And there hasn't been, I didn't learn about this through the town. That's my point, is that this has been on the docket for a year and a bit, and the owners of those properties that are on that list to be inspected, whatever that means, I'm not sure what that means yet, should have been notified so that they could have made a presentation to council when that exercise was approved. And that's the part that's a bit annoying, is that we're 14 months behind the 8 ball. Even though it's been confirmed that nothing's happened yet, that's irrelevant. You guys have approved a program to go through this exercise, which we didn't have any debate as being an address on that list. That's my only point.
Okay, I don't think this is that different from the process that we used in the other heritage programs. Is that the case?
Yes, it is the case, and I would even suggest that this is at a stage that's less formal than the program we normally go through on heritage properties. What was approved in January was an overall strategy. This gives an idea of the properties that may be considered, so it doesn't even hit the listing process that we typically undertake on heritage properties.
What I meant to say is when the heritage building list that got generated, when it was first generated, it at some point had to have this kind of status, which is to say, here's a bunch of properties that we're going to consider putting onto the formal list. At some point, there had to have been an informal list that we're going to go out and consider whether they should be added or not.
Yes, and typically that list is at an internal staff level, and it's not until there's been research done on that property that it comes forward to Heritage Oakville and then on to council. In this case, that basic information or that basic research on those properties has not even yet been undertaken.
Right, so this is the first time that any of us have seen this particular list as being a list of the type of properties that might be considered for consideration. So, how are we going to go out and tell the rest of these people? Assuming this project gets funded and gets moved forward, how and when do we tell others?
If I can make a comparison between a building, normally a building we do not notify until we've actually done the research and we've come forward and recommending it to be listed. Heritage Oakville and Council considers that, and then we notify the applicant. In this particular case with cultural landscape, to really understand it to the greatest extent, you'd want to be on the property, which means that if we're even thinking about a property, we would be giving notice to the owner that we are thinking about it and could we have access to the property. So in cultural landscape circumstances, those property owners usually get a much earlier notice than would be the case on our normal heritage properties.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So, members of the committee, are there any other members of residents or interested citizens who wish to provide information? I don't think there's anybody else. Okay, on any of the items before us today. So we've been dealing formally with item number 7, which is the 2015 Budget Commissioner presentations. Through those presentations, we've gone through the materials that deal with the other reports that are on the agenda, items 1 through 5 and 6. And what I would like to do is propose to you that we move a motion to receive the Commissioner presentations and ask for further reports on a number of items. And the list that I have here includes a report on funding options for Rebecca Street at 16 Mile Creek Bridge replacement, a report on options for management of reserves, circulate the presentations that were provided to the committee, for a report on the level of funding for transit related to existing areas and related to growth areas. 5, report on options regarding redeploying the funding currently dedicated to Let's Talk Oakville. 6, that staff report on the level of overtime pay in emergency services, including year-over-year changes. And I think that's really related to the opening of the new station, right? 7, that staff report on the type of seed used in parks and boulevards. 8, that staff report further on the LED conversion program to review debt requirements and an appropriate recommendation for committee's consideration. Are there any other items that you want to add on? Councillor Elgar, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, Chair Adams, I'm just wondering, another report regarding what we're not able to cover from development charges because they're not allowed, based on the revision in 1997 of the Development Charges Act.
So a report on growth funding that's not provided through DCs?
Correct.
Anything else? Councillor Demoff then?
I had 2 actually. One
Okay.
was to include by law enforcement evenings and weekends through Service Oakville, what the cost of that would be.
So a report on enhancing bylaw enforcement hours to include evenings and weekends?
Yeah. And the other one was the cost for additional resources to implement our active transportation and traffic demand management programs.
So a report to provide, say that again, please?
Pardon?
Could you repeat, please?
The additional staff resources or additional resources for active to implement our active transportation and traffic demand management programs.
So could that be read as resources to speed up the implementation? Because we have a program, and I think your concern is it's just not fast enough. Is that it?
Well, even to do what we're planning on doing. So not to do it faster, but to make sure that we can actually implement what we plan on doing now.
Okay. Just to speed up and implement.
That sounds good.
The active transportation master plan, and what was the other?
Traffic demand management.
Traffic demand management, okay. Okay, anything else?
Do you know, instead of speed up, because it's not, I'm not necessarily talking about going faster, but to implement the plans in a timely manner might be more along the lines of what I'm thinking.
Well, I think it amounts to the same thing, but that's fine. A report to provide additional resources to implement the ATMP and traffic demand management programs in a timely manner. Yeah. Anything else? Councillor Elgar?
It was just further when we were talking at the very beginning, and it was regarding councillors finding out when emails are sent in for an issue that residents have, and to find out what can be done so that we can receive the information.
Okay,
how we go about that.
so report, how about a report on sharing electronic issue intake with councillors?
Yeah, and see if what staff can come back with, or at least some big thing when you're sending in something, that it spells out that please be notified that councillors have no idea that this is being received by staff, you know.
So
Yeah, that's it.
okay, I think we understand what the issue is, and I think staff
Yeah,
get it,
okay.
and we'll take a note out of it. Some of the, it is possible that some of these things might take longer. For example, that electronic intake issue might require staff to review a number of issues, and it may not make it in this budget cycle, is what I'll say. But
I can appreciate that, but at least they can put a notice on when they do send in that we don't know what's going on.
right, so I
Yeah,
think, Mr.
yeah.
Green?
Can I just clarify then, Mr. Chair, that the reports would come back on the 23rd, which is your meeting for deliberations? That would give us time to author them. If some of the reports should actually go perhaps to a standing committee, a little larger than we can maybe deal with, we would report at that time.
Yeah, so so to answer your first question, yes, they need to be able to be available for the deliberations
Yes.
meeting. If they are available in advance, I think all the better, because it would,
Oh, well,
for
sorry, in saying that, I meant
Yeah.
we'd send them out with the agenda
yeah.
ahead of time, but for the deliberations meeting.
Because I think it's important for committee members to be able to consider them ahead of the deliberation meeting, so that if there's any follow-up
Yeah.
questions that they have, that they can be dealt with.
That's right. So I think the agenda goes out next Thursday for the 23rd, so you would expect to get them next
So
Thursday.
we would have a week and a half's worth of time in between, is that right? Right. Councillor Elgar?
Yeah, it was just also, when we're talking to Enrico about the snow plowing equipment being used, I think he's going to, he's going to bring back something about what we're purchasing?
I understood him to say that that's in progress.
Yeah. I just wonder when, before, if they're purchasing anything going forward for this year.
So through to you, Mr. Chair, so that contract is for sidewalk equipment in the 2015, 16, and beyond winter years. And so as part of our operating budget, we have a contract service amount. So it would be through our normal procurement processes that we would establish those services. But just to confirm, what we're going out with for tender is not the tractors that you've been seeing out there. It is a trackless type of tractor, which is what we've used in the past, but it does come at a higher cost. So it is our intent to try to procure that type of equipment.
I'm fine with that then, I think, and
Yeah,
I
okay.
appreciate what we're trying to do.
I think they understand the sod damage issue that we all complain about. Councillor Demoff, did you have something else you wanted to add or clarification?
I was just asking when the agenda was coming out and you
Okay,
asked that question.
I think we're
so-
about to get confirmation of that.
Next Thursday, March 19th.
That's not next Thursday.
Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong week.
Are you on the 12th or are you on the 19th?
19th.
Okay, so we won't receive it till the week before the committee meeting, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So I actually do have a problem with that, because that means that it's available on the 20th, right? We would get it the night of the 19th. It would be available for the public on the 20th, which is a weekend. Is there any way to get it before that? Because I find getting something on a Friday, even if members of the public want to comment on it, then we're here Monday morning at 9:30. And it's the end of March break.
We'll see what we can strive to do.
It may be possible that we can get some of it at least next week, for example.
There may be some of the more straightforward we could.
Yeah, so perhaps we can endeavor to get at least some of it to us next week.
We will do our best to get it out to members of the committee.
Okay,
And
I
as
think that,
quickly as we can.
I think that's what our staff can commit to at this point, recognizing the timing issue. However, I think the discussion we've had on all of these topics is a good discussion, and it's getting us closer to where we want to be, I think. So I've got that list of 12 items then that we can add on as a request for various parts of information. We also have items 1 through 6, and what I would like to suggest is that we receive all of those reports and refer them to the deliberation meeting on the 23rd. Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Meara has moved all of those. Is there any further comment or question? Okay, then all those in favor? Yeah, okay, that's passed.
So what did we do with item 7? Are you adding those or those staff direction?
So we received item number 7, and we've we cited these as a request for report. And all of this was moved by Councillor O'Meara.
Okay.
Okay. Is there anything else, members of committee, that you'd like to deal with today before we adjourn for the moment? No? Okay. Then for those who might be watching in TV land or electronically in some way, we have dealt with all of the items on the agenda. The Monday, March 9th meeting is not required and so has been deleted from the list of meetings. The next meeting that we'll be holding will be on Wednesday, March 11th, which is the delegation day. We have two meeting times for members of the public. The first is at 9:30 and the second is at 7 p.m. Should members of the public wish to delegate before the committee, they can certainly let the town clerk know to be put on the list. Otherwise, they are welcome to join us and be recognized from the floor as we did today. After that, we'll be going to the March 23rd deliberations meeting, and the recommendations from that meeting will go to council for consideration on the 30th of March. Okay? Very good. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate all of the efforts of our staff going through all the commission presentations, preparing all of that material, and preparing the giant budget book. So thanks very much for all of that effort.